Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 278 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. We're back already. It feels like we just did a show a couple days ago. I guess actually it has been like 2 business days since we did episode 277, but we're trying to get back on our normal every Tuesday schedule, and so we're here, and the good news is it's November. So we have plenty of games to talk about today. Alongside me to do that is Matthew Kyle. What's up, Matt?
Not much. Are we confusing the Europeans by being an hour early today?
Oh, that's right, because do they not have the daylight savings stuff? Really?
Not even every state has daylight savings.
I didn't realize that. What states do not have it?
Arizona doesn't.
I'm okay with this one, where you get the extra hour of sleep.
With a change, yeah, but I would rather we go daylight savings like the summertime forever.
Yeah. I mean, there's really no reason for it, right?
If there is, no one's been able to figure it out.
Why did it ever start? I don't get it.
There's a lot of weird. I don't think anyone fully knows. Like, there's that whole farmer thing, but there's like the farmer explanation doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not a thing anybody needs. So there's theories, but nobody really knows exactly why.
It seems like maybe they did it just so people didn't have to drive to work in the dark.
I mean, that's some of the stuff today that people say, "Oh, I don't want to do that because otherwise it's dark when I don't." Well, it's dark when you leave,
right?
So
yeah,
how about the fact that we're spending so much time at work we never see the sun at a certain time of year? How about we talk about that instead of moving the time around?
That has been happening to me. Mm-hmm. I'll wake up, it'll be dark out, and I'll work all day. The sun will go down, it'll be dark again before I quit. Yeah.
Well, by about a month, it's going to be pretty dark out there by the time we finish this show.
It's true. Yeah, start getting dark.
Because by mid-December, it's dark around 4:30 here.
Yeah, I went to a wedding on Saturday night, and I was very happy that I got an extra hour of sleep because I had a couple drinks, and I wanted to get up and watch football, which starts at 10 a.m. here, people. And so I got an extra hour of sleep before I had to get up and watch football, which was nice. But yeah, there's not really a strong argument for daylight savings to stick around. And it seems like there is a groundswell of people trying to eliminate it. So
I guess Europe fell back previously.
Oh, so they are on the normal schedule then. Mm-hmm. Nox Aeternitis, 1970s energy crisis.
That's not true. This goes way back before the 70s.
Oh, McWomble, it started with the Victorians who wanted people to enjoy the longer days in the summer. Nothing to do with farmers.
Yeah, I don't know where the farmer thing came from, but that's the explanation you usually see online these days. Mm-hmm. It's not true.
No.
Any farmer will tell you that's not true. They don't care. Cows don't care what time it is.
They'll still give up the milk.
Yeah, the sun doesn't change. They know where they are.
Well, we are back. It's only been a couple days since we last did a show, and the way some people watch GameFace, some people may not even watched the last episode in full. They're 3-hour shows, so some people break it up. They'll listen to it like on their morning walk, and they'll listen to 20 minutes at a time. So you're going to have a nice backlog of GameFace. And again, as I said at the show open, there are plenty of games to play right now. In fact, I had to tell Matt to hold off on one of them, and we'll cover it next week because we have enough for this show already. Also, some crazy weird stuff happened in the last few days. We're going to tackle that stuff, and we have a couple big games to get to as well. Any housekeeping that I got? I don't think so. Ask Shane Anything went great. So thank you very much. I know I asked in the last episode for people to show up, and they did. I think we had 5 or 6 different people on the show this time. The show is up for our patrons. It is up at Patreon. It's up at sifted.net. And if you're a YouTube All Access member, you got it as well. 50 minutes, really good conversation, like 6 or 7 different questions, which hasn't happened for quite a while. So Ask Shane Anything saved. Great job, guys. We'll have one more of those in December before we take off for the holidays. And Matt, I just realized we've only got 4 or 5 episodes left of GameFace before the year's over. We'll have our Game of the Year episode, which is always kind of the last one we do before Matt and I leave for the holidays. And leading up to that, we've got 4 or 5 regular episodes of GameFace. It also looks good as far as how the games are spaced out. So we'll have at least 1 or 2 big games for every episode until we're done, which is also good news. I also just got an invite to the Elden Ring technical test that they're about to do, and I'm very excited about that. We're going to talk about that game on the show today because they showed off a huge chunk of gameplay. We're going to talk about Call of Duty Vanguard, after the show last week, I was talking about how I had not got review code, and that was weird, and it is still weird. But when I got home, it was in my inbox. So I don't know if they were watching the show and they're like, crap, we forgot to send it to Shane. But I tend to not believe that because there are hardly any reviews for it out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen any real critics saying much. Like, it sounds like everybody got it late.
Yeah. Like, it seems like GameSpot, IGN, Game Informer, that may have been it. Or, like, the sites that got it early. And then their reviews came in all piecemeal. Like, IGN did a separate Zombies review, did a separate campaign review, did a separate multiplayer review, which I'm not a huge fan of, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't want to count on kind of stringing the fans along and hoping that they're going to keep jumping from one video to the next to keep getting everything about a game. You're not going to have to do that with GameFace today. We're going to tackle all three elements of Call of Duty Vanguard on today's show. And in fact, that is the first topic for today's show. I question
the Vanguard, you might say.
Well, yeah. I question whether I should put this first. Because Call of Duty is such a weird game in our industry. It's the biggest game in the industry. But otaku kind of hate it. And let's be honest, our audience is pretty much otaku. The hardest of the hardcore. I still enjoy playing. Well, we'll get to that. I generally still enjoy playing
anime fans?
What'd you say?
Anime fans?
Anime fans.
Otaku.
What about it?
Otaku is like a term for anime fans.
Well, it's also a term for like hardcore gamers in Japan.
Well, otaku just means hardcore anything in Japan, but in English we usually mean hardcore anime person.
Well, otaku in Japan is pretty much accepted that you're like a hardcore gamer if someone calls you otaku.
That's not what that means.
That's where Kotaku came from.
Right, but otaku literally just means super fan.
No, I understand the direct translation of it, but it's used almost always in the context of gamers. Why are we debating this? This is settled law.
It's really not.
We've literally talked about this like 1,000 times on GameFace, and now today, for some reason, you seem to be pushing back on it.
I don't remember you bringing up the word otaku.
I've mentioned it a million times. Anyway, our audience.
That's not what that means.
Okay. Anyway, our audience generally doesn't like Call of Duty, and we try to keep the discussion short. The problem is that it's hard to keep it short because there's so much to the games, which consequently is why they tend to sell really well. People get a lot of value out of them. So I'm going to try to be brief. I know a lot of you guys are not huge Call of Duty fans, but there are some of you are. We do have some like people who are bigger Call of Duty fans than me on Sifted and at our Patreon who do want to know my impressions of this because I've been reviewing Call of Duty since the beginning. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think back on all the Call of Duty games I've played. They have, I will admit, have started to all kind of blur together at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't name all of them now if you had a gun
with
to my
all
head.
the subtitles. Particularly the last like 3 or 4 have really blended together.
It's more the like the 2013 to 2016 stretch. Like I'm real hazy on those.
Yeah. Well, the last few have been like we're going back to World War I. Now we're going back to World War II again. There hasn't been anything unique in a long time for Call of Duty because every time they try to do something different, people reject it. Obviously, Advanced Warfare, one of our favorite Call of Duties ever, most people hated it. Yeah. It had the jetpacks, it had like the sci-fi stuff.
Infinite Warfare.
Or wait.
Yeah.
Infinite War.
Infinite Warfare was sci-fi. Advanced Warfare did have sci-fi stuff in it, but not like Infinite Warfare was like Halo shit.
I just made my point for me.
Yeah. It's that stretch of like Ghosts and Advanced Warfare and all that. I just can't keep any of it straight.
Yeah. And the last few have all been
because I didn't play a lot of them either until much later. I played Ghosts when it was like $5 for a copy from Amazon. But like I don't care about Call of Duty at this point. Yeah, once Modern Warfare 3 disappointed me as bad as it did, I pretty much stopped paying attention.
Yep.
I played Infinite Warfare because that's my shit, but me.
Yeah,
I didn't buy. I couldn't justify buying this.
I mean, to me, that's the best Call of Duty for a long time.
That's the best one since Modern Warfare 2.
And it sold the worst.
Yep. I mean, it is a big departure. So I get like maybe why it wouldn't have been as popular, but like in terms of, and I didn't play the multiplayer much at all, but in terms of campaign, like that's the most interesting thing they've ever done.
Well, the multiplayer too. You had jetpacks.
Yeah.
And the problem was all the kids who had been playing Call of Duty all that time were like, I can't handle the jetpacks, and my KD isn't where it usually is, so I'm going to go whine. And that's what happened. And so they changed it back to a more traditional game. And Vanguard, to segue into what we're about to discuss, is another one of those kind of traditional games. As I said, we're going to talk about each part of it. We're going to start off with the campaign. I used to really look forward to Call of Duty campaigns, like really look forward to them because they always seem to like push the envelope. For a long time, you always wondered like, okay, like what's going to be in this one? Is there going to be some crazy thing like no Russian that's just going to like shock you and end up shocking the world when you're finally able to talk about it? I feel like the campaigns in this franchise have really kind of lost their allure to the point where we had a Black Ops game that didn't have a campaign at all. This one does have one. It follows, at first it follows 6 super soldiers who are forming up to become the world's first ever special forces team that includes soldiers from multiple countries instead of just one.
So Rainbow Six.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it starts out with 6, and it's very quickly pared down to 4. I'm not going to share what happens to where you lose 2 of them, but very quickly it turns into 4. And each of the characters, they're all from somewhere different. There's like a sniper girl from Russia. There's a guy from North Africa. There's a guy from, I believe, Scotland. And they all have like their own specific things that they can do. So like the female sniper can like pull out her knife and create like a fake glint to get snipers to shoot the knife instead of shooting her. One of the characters has the ability to command the forces so he can instruct them on what to do, and there's a whole build up in the campaign where he takes over the troop after their captain dies, and they decide he's the leader, and then all of a sudden he has these leadership capabilities which really amount to like nothing other than, hey, there's a tank, everybody shoot that tank. You just tap up on the D-pad or whatever to instruct them on what you want to do, and there's these context sensitive things that pop up. There's not much mystery to it at all, honestly. But anyway, you play each of these characters. So you start at the beginning and they're all together. And then something happens and you lose 2 of them, again, which I'm not going to spoil. And then there's just the 4 left. And then you start playing as each one of them separately in their own little mini campaign. And I do say mini campaign because each one of them is probably 45 minutes to an hour long. And you get to know the soldiers. You get to learn their special ability and how to use it and the best context to use it. And then at the end, they all come together after you've learned what each of them can do, and they all come together to fight together for the final stretch of the campaign. The campaign itself, about 4.5, 5 hours long, not very difficult, other than the fact that a lot of times they don't give you a lot of direction on what you're supposed to be doing. So there's like a stealth section in the campaign, and they just throw you out into the woods into the dark, and and they don't tell you to do anything. And so you have to run like 6 different directions before you figure out the direction the game wants you to run. And that is one thing about this franchise that has been that way for a long time, is they try to give you the illusion of player choice. Oh, you don't have to go this way. You can go around and you can flank or whatever. Anytime you try to do that, in this campaign especially, it's a disaster. You can just tell that there are very specific ways that they want you to run through the level. And for the most part, it's pretty easy to stay on the trail. But like I said, some of the sections where they ask you to like do stealth or things like that, they don't give you much instruction, and you just get annihilated in a second because the whole experience is tuned to that cattle chute that they expect you to run down. And it's very inflexible. There's really not a lot of leeway to kind of play the campaign how you want to. None of this, though, is big news for anyone who's played a lot of Call of Duty. Let's just be honest. It's been that way for quite a while. It's really linear. There's no choice in this. What really bothers me about these campaigns, Matt, is that I remember Black Ops 2. Remember all the stuff that Black Ops 2 did? Mm-hmm. It had player choice that actually affected the story. It had multiple endings. It had that crazy, like almost like real-time strategy component to it. Mm-hmm. And since then, it again, to what we were saying before we really got into talking about this game, every time they try to do something different, people reject it or freak out about it. Like, I thought Black Ops 2 was amazing, and it got great reviews. Higher than Black Ops 1, if I remember correct. And there's a bug, you can see. The code isn't as clean in this as you might be used to with a Call of Duty game as well. It's crazy linear, it's crazy scripted. There's always stuff blowing up around you. You're always getting like put in these positions where almost like monster closets where enemies just pop out. Like here, you jump down into the sub. Oh, there's a dude right there. Mm-hmm. Or you open the door.
Even though you're just throwing a grenade down there.
Right. Yep. Or you open the door. Oh, there's 3 dudes standing right on the other side of the door. It does kind of use some of Doom's cheaper tactics as far as, displaying enemies and introducing enemies to the player. The cinematics in this are CG, which is odd because the real-time visuals are fine, which generally to me says, like, hey, we didn't have time to do the cinematics in the engine, so we're going to pay some outside source to create them. And they do look better than the real-time graphics, but not by a lot. The step up isn't all that large, so which again leads me to believe that they had to just pay someone to get the cinematics done. Remember, there were rumors about this game like not coming together, and Treyarch had to come in and finish the zombies mode because that wasn't going to be done in time.
Is this Sledgehammer in the lead?
It's like everybody. Like when you start this game, like 8 studios pop up on the screen. I was like, so who actually did most of the heavy lifting on this? I don't know. I do know that Treyarch is responsible pretty much 100% for the zombies mode. But the campaign and the multiplayer, it seems like your guess is as good as anyone's on who actually was the lead on that stuff, and who just kind of pitched in. But again, when you boot up the game, like 8 studios flash across the screen. What else is there to say? Just a quick rundown of the 4 operatives. The guy from North Africa is an explosives expert. One guy's a paratrooper, and one guy's a pilot. And one dude's thing, Matt, is that he can carry a lot of grenades. Literally, that's his thing, that he can carry a lot of grenades. The pilots, I think, is the worst of them all because you actually pilot planes and like they give you, it's like you feel like you're not even playing it because the auto aim is just constantly locking on to the other planes. You feel like, and a lot of this game feels that way. It feels like you're doing a lot more watching than you are playing, and the extended, lengthy cinematics, the CG cinematics, don't help with that at all. A lot of times the conversations in this just run on, and it's pretty well written. I'll say that. And
one of these days, games are going to figure out that you can't get shot that far under the water.
Yeah, how far will bullets go before they
barely
lose their speed?
Hitting water at that speed is like hitting concrete because of the density of water.
That's true.
So basically, if you're more than like they shatter, they disintegrate.
Yeah.
So if you're more than about an inch underwater, bullet's not going to hit you.
Interesting. I didn't think it was that shallow.
Water's very hard. That's why you don't want to hit it too hard when you're jumping.
Yeah.
That would have been a very painful landing right there.
Yes. Well, he would have died.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
At least broken their ankles.
Yeah.
But like whenever you see in movies like people getting like shot like that, like there's not a lot of bullet. I mean, maybe like a 50 cal could do that, but it's like, but even then, at that velocity, you're hitting it even harder, and it's even more like hitting concrete. So, if you're getting shot at, and you're in a river, dive, and you won't get hit.
You will survive. Yeah. Interesting.
Don't believe what Activision's lies have told you.
Now you might wonder: are these scenarios based upon things that really happened, or are they based on real people that were in the war, famous heroes from the war?
So this is all World War II?
It is, yeah. Man. And they're not. The locations and the battles that these scenarios take place in are real, and the times are real and stuff like that, and it does follow the general course of the war.
But there wasn't like an Avengers team?
No.
that dreaded.
And there definitely wasn't a team like that was made up of people from 4 different countries who all complement each other perfectly with their
it looks
specialties.
Nice.
It is.
I admire the lighting stuff on the guns and things.
Yeah, I'm torn.
It's a little one color.
Yeah,
but like, the flashes lighten up the room. I mean, it looks nice. Like, it doesn't make me want to play it, but like, it feels like they put effort into the visuals at least.
I'm torn, honestly.
I don't know if the art design does it any favors, but I do think it looks nice from a technical point of view.
I'm torn.
I saw some chugging in the rain.
Yeah,
in that first scene.
There are some moments where the game looks really good, and there are some moments where it looks almost bad as well. I'll say this: like the environments are really cluttered, and there's a lot of detail, and it's all modeled and rendered, and they're not like using textures to make something look like something. They're actually modeling it, and there's lots of stuff to shoot that will go flying in the air. So in that way, it looks pretty good, but. This footage is on PS5. I guess I just expect more, Matt. Maybe I'm just way out of bounds on that. Maybe my expectations for what we're going to get.
I think you are. I don't really know what else you want from a Call of Duty game that has to be multi-generational. Like, this looks real good to me. I mean, it doesn't look pretty in terms like it's not an attractive game that makes me want to play it. It's brown and it's like it's ugly, but technically it looks good to me. Like I'm definitely seeing lighting effects and stuff on the barrel of the gun and then in the flashing and lighting up the room and stuff and lighting up the other characters that like you just couldn't do last gen.
Yeah. The multiplayer does run at 120 frames per second, and stuff is obviously cut down. The detail and everything's chopped down a good bit for that to get it to run at that. The campaign, actually, I'm not even sure if you can set it to run at 120. I don't think so, though, because you mentioned there were a couple points in that rain scene on the train where it does buckle a little bit.
Is there like a quality versus performance choice?
Yeah. So you can choose in the multiplayer. I haven't looked to see if you can choose for the campaigns. I honestly just don't know that. But it is a typical roller coaster ride. There are people who have not played 20 Call of Duty campaigns who will find this a lot more fun than I did. But if you're like most of our audience and you've been playing Call of Duty games for a long time, there's really not much that happens in this that you're going to be like, oh wow, that really switches things up, or that really changes. It's also,
if
Matt,
you really want to see a windmill on fire, it looks like they got that.
They nailed that. And Matt, also, I feel like the punches have been pulled in this. Like I was saying earlier about things like no rush in and how a lot of games will have like some scene in them where you're like, oh my gosh, this game, like there's a scene where stuff is really, really bad that is happening and they cut away. And there's another one where they dip to black. Like, usually these games show it. Almost to the point where you're like, whoa, like, did you really need to show that? This one, not so much, man. Like, they really, I felt like, dialed back on the shock and the gore. Now, there are moments where, like, you just shoot someone in the head and their head just disappears and blood starts squirting out of their neck. But, like, as far as the, like, really, like, morally kind of repugnant stuff where you're like, oh, and then you eventually say, well, that's war. There's not a lot of that in this. I haven't been really shocked by this game, and I don't know, compared to other Call of Duties, that quotient's really low. And maybe that's another thing that they could have done better with the visuals, but, who's going to hire a gore guy just to make sure you gore the game up with all the power that you have from PS5 or Xbox Series X? Seems like an odd task to assign someone to, but it's a pretty tame campaign in general.
Shane demands intestine physics.
I mean, we're kind of getting it in all these games now, and they're not even next-gen games. So I don't know. Like, there always seems to be like a shock and awe factor to Call of Duty campaigns, and other than some stuff like this where you see like 80 dudes running on screen at the same time, it's not really there. It's all more about like, oh, well, there's a nice headshot. It's really more about like, oh wow, now we can push this many guys on screen at whatever detail we've set them at. But there is a lot of trial and error in the campaign. Like, if you turn the wrong way, you die pretty much, and then you're like, oh, I didn't need to turn that way. I need to turn the other way, and then you turn the other way, and you live.
Playing the remastered Modern Warfares was like, wow, I didn't remember that as being, and didn't have the patience for it anymore.
Yeah, there was a couple times where I got pretty angry with this. The other thing about
World War II had that too.
Yeah,
I just got tired of like trying to guess which way they wanted me to go and then dying when I chose wrong. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's trial and error. There's no doubt about it. This game has a lot of it too. Like this scene, like if you try to hide behind the tanks for cover, if you're in the middle of the tanks, you get shot. If you're on the right side of the tanks, you get shot. If you're on the left side of the tanks, you're fine. Like, but the game doesn't tell you that, and so you die a couple times until you figure out exactly where they want you to go. That happens a lot in this game.
And maybe there was a time when I was more like, oh, I guess I just don't know how to behave in a war kind of thing. And now I'm just like, no, I think this just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And the checkpoints, too, they take you back a lot farther than a lot of Call of Duty games if you die. There's a couple where I die where I literally died and just immediately respawn because there'll be something that happens, like a huge rush of enemies or something. And so you're like, okay, like they put a checkpoint here because they know a lot of people are going to die here. But if you die in a spot where they don't really anticipate a lot of people dying...
Wow, that was weird.
What?
The two enemies like kind of popped over the cover, but they didn't
recognize it.
They didn't like jump over it so much as they sort of like boinged up over it.
There's weird stuff in this. Like you saw the shot earlier where the guy's just kind of suspended in midair. The multiplayer has all kinds of weird bugs like that. Where enemies just the physics get screwed up with the geometry and the game doesn't know what to do.
Whoa, there was another one.
Yeah. Yeah, it has anomalies that a lot of these games don't have, but it does have a campaign, which isn't a given anymore in Call of Duty. But I would say this, it's like, if this is why you're thinking about or planning on maybe not buying Call of Duty, don't. I mean, this should not determine it. This is not worth $60. And again, it was like 4 hours long, 4.5 hours long. It did not take me long to get through it at all, which was good because I didn't have a lot of time to play this game before this episode. So it worked out as far as getting through it before it was time to talk about it on GameFace. But 4.5 hours, 5 hours, if that's what you're buying it for, no way. Not worth it. And this is not a game you're going to find on Game Pass or any place where you can get it cheap or at a discount. So, I think for most people, if you're not going to play multiplayer, you're not going to play zombies, you're not into Warzone, don't buy it for the campaign. And honestly, like, you're not missing much. Just go watch it on YouTube. I hate to ever say that, but this is a perfect example of a game I have no problem if you go and watch the campaign on YouTube, because asking someone to spend $60 for 4.5 hours or 5 hours, that's insane to me. And there are a lot of people who don't play multiplayer. As you said on last week's episode, you know, a lot of people get intimidated by it or just get their butts kicked and don't want anything to do with it. And so if you're one of those people who buy these games for the campaign, I would definitely steer clear. All right, let's move on to multiplayer. Multiplayer, Matt, I hate it.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't like anything that they've done that's changed from last year's game. The movement is clunky and slow. Clamoring is slow. Figuring out whether you can clamor over something is a crapshoot. So really the big change for the multiplayer, and this is kind of where we're at this point with Call of Duty multiplayer in 2021, is that there's lots of doors and shutters and windows that you can open and close. That's like the big thing. Or you can shoot or bash and create lanes to shoot through. That stuff is cool. Like finding a spot to kind of camp and then just kind of popping a hole through like a shutter or whatever and then sticking your gun out the hole. Like that stuff's cool. But when you're running and someone's shooting at you and you're trying to get inside, or you can hear a kill streak coming down on the sky and you're trying to get inside, figuring out whether you can get through a window or not is completely random. You could have someone have busted out the whole shutter and there's one little piece of a plank sticking up from the bottom of the window frame, and that will keep you from climbing in the window. It is infuriating. The other problem is that they've put so many doors, so many different entry points in this game that you never know where people are coming from. And if you don't have a surround sound system or a pair of good headphones that will show you direction, you're screwed. You're at a huge advantage if you have directional audio in this, because literally enemies are just constantly coming in from behind. Spawning. Awful. Matt, yesterday I played a match where I spawned 3 times and there was a dude on the other team just standing there waiting for people to spawn, shooting him in the head. 4 times. And there's no way to choose your spawn, to choose to spawn somewhere else. So that in conjunction with enemies just coming from anywhere. Some people may like that. I don't know why you would, but some people may. Some people may say, well, that's more realistic, which is true. I'd agree with that. Like in a real war, you don't know where people are coming from. They could come from anywhere. But when you're talking about a competitive shooter, where you're trying to organize with your teammates and create team tactics, it is very frustrating.
Yeah, well, that's also like more realistic in a sense, but also like in a real situation, you have an objective. You're trying to get somewhere. You're not just like slowly rotating around a map of control points, and like, you know, it's eventually the other side runs out of people. Like it's you know, a death match is not a realistic situation.
Yeah, well, it never is going to be, but
yeah, because you have people blinking into existence at random places to try to keep it fair. But apparently, it sounds like they're not very good at that in this.
No,
I mean, they've always had spawn problems in Call of Duty.
This is the worst. The worst.
You'd think they get better at that over time.
I think part of the problem is that there are 20 maps in this game. That's staggering. Like, best case scenario, you ask for like 12 or 14 on launch day from Call of Duty. There's 20. And they're all over the map. There are gigantic ones. There are small ones where literally you spawn in the same room as the enemy. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, okay, who can ever get their gun up the fastest, like, ends up getting the kills. And there is that can be interesting because then you can start creating other builds that are more functional for those maps. Like, for instance, if you want to make sure that you can pull up your gun faster than anybody else, you can do that. I think the problem, though, is that there are so many maps, they have not managed to balance them all for the spawns. And they had the beta, but the beta had, I think, if I remember, like 7 or 8 maps out of the 20. And so, if you didn't have a ton of players, you just had your QA people working on those other 12 maps, it's very easy to see where they would not be able to get spawns to work. And the other thing about it, Matt, is they have this other new element. So, where if you just choose like a playlist, team deathmatch, every time you play, the number of players is different. There's a word for it. I've got it here somewhere. And you can set it too. Like, you can actually go back and set it. It's called a combat pacing. So some matches, it's 8 on 8. Some is 12 on 12. Some is 21 on 21. And they do scale that for the maps, generally. But I think that in conjunction with so many maps, with so many variances in how many players are going to be playing on those maps, because you can also just choose to say, I want to play, say you want to play 20 players on a really small map and just have this mayhem match or whatever. You could do it. And so I could see where that would be hard to balance, but I'm not doing that. I haven't gone in and set up these weird scenarios to try to test the boundaries of their spawning or anything like that. I just have like a playlist set up, and Team Deathmatch is one of the playlists I play. And it's having these issues, like big time. You're right. There's always spawn issues in a Call of Duty game, but usually that happens in like a map or two. And you figure it out, and they figure it out. And within like 2 weeks, they've adjusted it, and everything's fine, mostly. This one, it's just like every match. Like, there's somebody spawning behind you, or you're spawning in the room with like, there have been times, Matt, where I've spawned in a room where the only people in the room are 2 or 3 of the enemy. And you can just see them. They're like, oh my gosh, like the dude just spawned like right in the room. And they're all scrambling trying to shoot you or whatever. It's really weird. And because, again, the maps have so many entry points, so I end up trying to gravitate towards maps that are like 3-lane maps, Here's a base, here's 3 lanes in between them. And you can do a lot with that and make it fun and exciting and exhilarating, and you always at least have a vague idea of the direction the enemies are coming. That's not always going to work. Sometimes when I play matches on maps like that, I intentionally run along the side to get in behind the enemy. So you still get that. You'll still get people coming from behind if they're being strategic, which makes sense. You should be allowed to do that. You're burning the time to run all the way to the end of the battlefield, to loop around and come in behind the enemy. That's fine. But when you're just spawning behind enemies and just getting those easy kills where they're just looking the other direction, this game is full of that stuff. Pick 10 is basically the same. You can, when you start with each gun, you only have like 3 attachments you can attach, and as you keep playing with that gun and it levels up, it starts unlocking more of the attachments until you finally get out to the full 10. They've done a pretty good job with the World War II technology so that when you play it, it doesn't feel like you're in like the 1940s. They've managed to find ways to like work around like what the technology was that existed at the time. The guns, I don't like how the game feels at all. I don't like how the guns feel. I don't like how the running works. I don't like how the sliding works. Everything feels sluggish and delayed. And it was great in last year's game. That's one thing I really liked about last year's game. The traversal was awesome. You just really felt like you were connected to it. And in this, you just don't. Like the last year's game, like, you could literally feel when each foot hit the ground and then pushed you forward. You could feel the woof, 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 like as you ran. In this, it's just like your legs are moving and you're just moving at a speed. Like, I don't know what they did or why they did it this way. It just does not feel good to play. The going prone takes way too long. So if like you're getting lit up and you're in the middle of a reload, you're like, I just want to go down my belly. It takes way too long, you end up getting killed. Like, I just don't like how this game feels to play at all. I will say this, they did tone down aim assist a lot in multiplayer. It's not snappy. You won't see your reticle, like, just drawing. Like, sometimes you'll be scoped in, and in prior games, you'd be scoped in, and if someone would run across your view, and your gun would literally, like, follow them. Like, there's hardly any of that in this. But I would also add, if you're a player who's not all that skilled, and you rely on that snappy aim assist, you're going to get your lunch eaten in this game. You have to be a lot better with manual aiming, and I'm totally cool with that. I wish more games did it. Battlefield, honestly, 2042 has almost no aim assist. And it took me a while. I was like, oh, wow. Like, I have to actually sight these guys up instead of the game kind of doing it for me. But I will say this, like, there's tons of options. The multiplayer is feature-rich. There's all these new match types that we haven't had before. The big one is called Champion Hill. It's kind of a cross between gun game and Warzone. So when you start with like a pistol, and as you get a kill, you get a new gun until you're up into the assault rifles and blah, blah, blah. When you kill an enemy, they drop all their stuff. So that's where kind of like the Warzone comes in. But it's teams of 2 versus 2 or 3 versus 3, so the matches are quick and snappy. They aren't drawn out like a Battle Royale match would be. And so I like it. It's okay. It's not something that makes it worth buying the game for. But that just kind of sets a tone for all the multiplayer modes. There are a lot of unique kind of modes that they've set up already. And I'm sure there's more that are going to be coming eventually. What else? Oh, there's a new mode called Control where you take points, but the points move. And that's good because you don't have that repetitive cycle of, like, take a point, enemy shows up, takes the point, you spawn, you run back, you take the point.
Oh, they took the point we just took. So we got to go back to, oh, now they took the point. It's just like, this is why I stopped playing multiplayer.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing over and over and over.
And these points move. They don't, like, disappear and reappear somewhere else. They literally move on the map, which is crazy. So if you're sometimes when you're trying to, like, take it, you have to move along with...
They've almost combined, like, control with, like, payload.
A little bit, yeah. That's a good way to put it, actually. Yep. What else? There's all kinds of customization you can do. Like I said, you can set up matches so that they do pretty much anything you want on any map that you want.
Blood Gulch, Warthogs only.
Yeah, I've played those games before. The one thing I say about the Gunsmith and the Pick-10 is that some of the stuff that you really want is, like, the last stuff to unlock. Like, of course, you do get, like, your reticle first, which is important. Like, if you just want to use a red dot or something like that, that always does unlock first. But then some of the other stuff that's more crucial to actually controlling your gun, like the stuff that controls, like, recoil and things like that, or aim down sight movement and stuff like that, stabilizing your aim, essentially, that stuff later before it unlocks. You have to. I think I got my gun at, like, level 11 or something before it finally started to, like, feel good. And then some other important stuff that comes later is, like, your mag size. So a lot of the guns from World War II, they don't have big mags. It's not 2021 where, like, you have this magazine that's like a banana clip like this long. All the guns hold, like, 15 rounds.
Although for some reason that's the icon.
It is
for the ammo.
I know, it is funny.
Like, it's basically like an AK-47 magazine.
Yeah. And so some of the biggest upgrades for me in this game with the weapons are the longer clips. Mm-hmm. Because reloading in any of these games is like you're in peril, basically, while you're reloading. And in this especially because enemies are coming from, like, every 360-degree direction, bursting into the rooms that you're in. You just never know where they're going to come from. And I think one thing people will like is there's really no camping. You can't camp. Because there's always a window behind you or a door behind you. And sometimes you don't even notice they're there because they're shut or they haven't been broken through yet. And you'll be standing there and you think you're safe, and all of a sudden someone will just go poosh and just punch something through the window or whatever, stick their gun in and just pop you in the head. So people who hate campers, I think maybe really like this. I can be a camper at times, depending on the map. Some maps it's just smart to camp and just to sit up in a window or whatever. And
yeah, I don't care about that. I mean, I'm good at that. What was it? I think it was Bad Company 2. Probably the best I ever was at any shooter was probably Bad Company 2, where you could spot for other people.
Yeah.
So, like,
oh yeah.
So
I forgot about that.
Abby would spot people, like, over a hill, and I would just shoot with, like, the right amount of, like, because there was bullet drop. So I'd raise it above just for whatever reason. That bullet drop in that game made sense to me, and I would just from, like, across the match, boom, boom, like they'd all just drop. Yeah. And I got obscenely high scores just, like, doing this spotter sniper thing, to the point that it's the only shooter I've ever gotten hate messages in. Fighting games plenty.
That's
but,
when
like,
you know you're doing something right.
Yeah, I was starting to get messages on PSN. It's like, oh, super camper. It's like, yep, now we're getting it.
That's when you know you're playing well. That's
the only time I felt like a real shooter player.
Yep, because that is what happens.
Yeah.
You play well, you get nasty messages sent to you.
Yeah.
by 8-year-olds.
A lot of that going around on the Virtua Fighter 5 a couple months ago.
There are 12 different operators in the multiplayer, and they all look like fighting game characters, and they all look different, and they all have multiple costumes, but they do nothing. It doesn't matter. None of them have special abilities that set them apart from anyone else. It's just all cosmetic.
Well, we can't have asymmetry.
Yeah.
That would be wrong.
Yeah. So I basically just...
That would be interesting, and we can't have that.
So I just choose whatever character will blend in the best on the map that I'm on, basically. Or I will choose a woman because they're smaller. What was it in GoldenEye? Was it Odd Job?
Odd Job.
Yeah. Where you could play as him and he was like 3 feet
half
tall.
Half size, yeah.
And after a while you made a role like
Odd
no one
Job
could
was
play as
banned.
Odd Job.
And then the people that would play like kneeling.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and like you just see like Pierce Brosnan like weaving around on one knee.
Yep.
Because that made you about the same size as Odd Job.
Yeah. What else? I think that's pretty much it for the multiplayer. Like I said, it is feature rich. There are a lot of options in there, but that's what happens when you've been making the same game for 20 years.
Yep.
Like the features just pile up, and they just continue to struggle to find new compelling ways to change it. They find ways to change it, they're just never compelling. And then they'll do something, and then they'll change it right back for the next one. And then 4 years later, they'll bring it back again.
Yeah, well, because this iteration, I mean, Call of Duty 1 is a very different game. Call of Duty 2 sort of like established the template of what modern Call of Duty is. So yeah, this is 16 years old now.
It's crazy. Yeah, time just flies by.
I mean, think about something that was 16 years old. When Call of Duty 2 came out, was the Genesis.
Yeah,
Genesis was 16 years old when the Call of Duty 2 came out.
It's nuts. I'll put it to you this way: I wish I had not uninstalled Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's multiplayer, but I needed.
You needed space.
Yeah, it's a PS5. That's like it's almost 200 gigs. And this is now 100 and some gigs.
Yeah.
And so I needed to delete the old game to get the new one on my hard drive. And now am I going to go back and download the other?
Can you at least like delete the campaign or something?
What'd you say?
Is it modular? Like, can you delete the campaign if
you
you're
know
done
what?
with it?
With this one, it didn't look that way. So they sent me a download code for it, and I just selected the PS5 version.
Yeah.
And it just downloaded all three. All four, actually. All four elements of the game. And we're not going to talk about Warzone today. I'm not a big Warzone Battle Royale player. And maybe it is silly that I haven't played that yet, because I do realize that that's what most people play.
Yeah, that's kind of the bigger draw now.
Because it's free.
Yeah, and I haven't seen a lot of people talking about this game, but there have been people I've seen that have been confused over what the difference between Vanguard and Warzone are, which seems bad.
Warzone's always the same. You'll just get a new map with every entry, and they do have a new map, but then the old map goes away in this game, which is odd, I think. I think we talked about that last week. But anyway, that's the multiplayer. If you do have Black Ops Cold War, I would just keep playing it. I'll be honest. If you only play Call of Duty for multiplayer, and you're like, should I upgrade to Vanguard? I do not think this is an upgrade at all. I think the movement and the guns, everything feels better in Black Ops Cold War. And then there's the third element. I do have B-roll for this, because I didn't think I had it before. And that is zombies. And Treyarch is making the zombies mode, or made the zombies mode in this. They created the first ever Nazi zombies mode. And this is Nazi zombies, which was the OG version of this. That's the first thing that we ever got was Nazi zombies. And this is the legit Nazi zombies. However, there is a caveat. The caveat is that the zombies mode isn't there yet. It's there, but it's not there. Zombies has really turned into like this crazy thing at this point, just driven by these CG cinematics, and you're seeing some of it now in the story.
It's about as close to Michael Fassbender as you can get without getting sued.
Yeah.
There.
And there's a story that goes along that carries you along from one match to the next. Well, that has not been included yet in Vanguard. There is a zombies mode there, and when you boot it up for the first time, there's this crazy cinematic that you're seeing right now that plays, but once you actually start playing it, they're just generic missions that you play without any context. The zombies mode is getting its full release on December 2nd or December 3rd. I can't remember exactly which. But this is one part of the game, Matt, where they have made major changes to it. And again, Treyarch, the OG zombie folks who started it, and in a lot of cases keep getting pulled in on these other games to finish the zombies mode. I don't think this is the first time Treyarch had to come in and save the zombies mode in one of these games where they try to give it to somebody else, they screw it up, and Treyarch saves the day. But this zombie mode is completely different from how it used to be, and I am 100% behind it. Had you played a zombies mode for the last, 5 years, Matt?
No, I don't think so.
It had become this crazy thing where...
The last one I played was, very, very, 50s sci-fi. Like, it was in, a drive-in theater, and,
I remember that one.
The characters were really weird and, kind of wacky and punky kind of thing.
They're mostly like that. They're very tongue-in-cheek, they become. The first one, I felt like was kind of serious. Treyarch's first shot at it was like, you're killing Nazi zombies. And then, for each Call of Duty, they don't necessarily...
famous for okay to use enemies for anything.
Right.
Nazis, zombies, aliens, and demons.
I'm cool with killing Nazis no matter when.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what, no matter when. I'll always want to kill Nazis and zombies. And so a lot of them have been crazy in the recent past, where there's these gumball machines. There's all these weird systems that are working while you're fighting. And so you have to manage your time. You're like, oh, I got this. There's a rush of zombies coming. You mow them down. Then you run over to the machine to upgrade or whatever. Now everything is done in a hub. So when zombies starts, you're in the hub. And in the hub, there's these portals. But also there's a crafting bench you can go to craft new weapons. There's these vending machines that you can go to increase your health or your health regeneration, things like that. And then when you're ready to fight, you go through a portal and go into the zombies world. And then right now there are only 3 different objective types inside once you go into the zombies world. There's this one where this obelisk floats around the map and you have to defend it from the zombies. So it's kind of like a moving control point that you're defending from the zombies. What were the other 2? Let's see. You follow the orb and protect it. And then there's a horde mode where you just protect one spot that doesn't move. And there's one other one.
Peggy 16.
Woo. Not Peggy 16. So, and the other thing too about it is that it's not like most zombies modes where you're inside a building and the zombies are trying to get into the building, and you're trying to board up the windows and you're grabbing weapons off of the wall. It doesn't work that way at all. The zombies literally just spawn out of nowhere. Which, I don't know. That's like 2 of one and 2 of another. Depending on your perspective, whether you're going to like that or not. I like the new way that it works in general. I like having the ability to kind of take a breath. And now one thing I'll say too is that when you do finish a round, you're given the choice. You can keep going and keep going on to the next round, or you can return back to the hub. And a lot of that depends on, what weapon do I have? Am I happy with the weapon? Do I have enough ammo? That kind of stuff. Am I getting beat up? Do I need to go back and choose some other kind of health power up or something? But I like the ability to finish a round, and if I want to, go back to the hub and get a better weapon, or increase my health, or increase my health regeneration, or something, or anything like that. Just that moment to breathe before you have to go back into the melee. And again, if you want to, you don't have to. You can just keep trudging forward if you want to. So there's eventually, when the plot is revealed for this, it's going to follow a German captain, a Nazi captain, who's using artifacts to raise the dead to win the war. It's set towards the end of the war when the Nazis are kind of already losing, and they've just basically got to the point where they're just desperate, and they're willing to try to use the occult to win the war as a last-ditch effort. So they use these artifacts. It wakes up this demon or whatever that takes over the Nazi captain, who then spawns all the zombies or revives all the zombies. What else is there to say? Oh, so when you do go back to the hub after you've finished a round, there are zombies in the hub, but there's not many. There's just kind of there to kind of keep it interesting or whatever. But so it's not completely dead, but as you keep completing rounds, new things unlock in the hub as well. So like when you first start, maybe the hub isn't there to increase your health, but after you finish the first round, you go back and there it is. So there's incentive to keep going back to the hub as well, because new things unlock as you do better in each round. What else? I think that might be it. Yeah.
It doesn't sound particularly complex.
It's not. I mean, right now especially. I mean, you're just basically waiting. You can see right here the zombies just popping out of that rift or whatever. How do you feel about not having the whole defend the house thing in zombies? Is that part of the compulsion for you when you played it?
No, I had no compulsion to play it.
You've never enjoyed it?
No, I never liked this mode.
It's always been
I did
hard.
find it to be. It was overly hard with the number of people we had because we didn't have a full team, and I mean, it doesn't seem like it now, but in at the time it was just like I spent most of my time boarding shit up.
Yeah,
like it was just like you were constantly trying to like board things up and like establish like some kind of defensive situation, and it would just disintegrate the instant the wave started. So it was just mostly like tedious to me. And it was, it was a little too much like, Left 4 Dead. Like I just, you got to do more than throw zombies at me to get me interested in anything. Like that's not Call of Duty's fault, but like, it was never compelling. It was more the idea was always more compelling. I always thought it was, the fact, the early ones where it was like, JFK and Richard Nixon and everybody like having a fight. Like that's funny. That's cool. Like
they used to be really irreverent.
Yeah.
And
when they put in like horror icon. There was one year I think where they had like Sarah Michelle Gellar and Johnny Trejo, Danny Trejo, and I was, like that was fun. I mean, I didn't play that, but it was a fun idea.
Yeah, they usually do have like big celebrity cameos. And I don't, because again, the full mode hasn't been launched yet. I don't know if they're going to do that with this one or not. But as of right now, there's nothing like that in it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would say. Right now, there's no personality in it at all. And that should come with the big update in early December. But for right now, it's literally just like there's 3 mission types. Keep playing those mission types over and over in different environments. And then go back, restock, get a new weapon, or buff your character, go back in through the portal, do it all over again. And it's just not that compelling. And, maybe I should be reserving my judgment until the full thing is launched. But it is weird that it's not.
They're asking for money for it.
Yeah,
you can judge it, I think.
You're charging me for zombies now. Yeah. So I think it's fair for me to talk about it in its current state because people who are looking to buy it, this is what they're going to get until, the beginning of next month. And that's a month. That's a month of this game on the market without one of its modes available. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely worth mentioning. And you also got a good look at it anyway with our B-roll to kind of see what it's like, the gameplay flow and everything like that. And yeah, there you go. That is Call of Duty Vanguard. I don't know if I'll go play Warzone. I don't know if it's worth it, honestly. I'm not a big fan of Warzone or Battle Royale.
I mean, maybe when the new map comes out.
Yeah, maybe I will then. But those are the 3 components that I played. And again, I do apologize for not having multiplayer B-roll for you guys on the live stream here. We usually have that stuff locked and loaded for you guys, but it's just kind of an exception this week. Any questions?
Nope.
I'm guessing not. I could have asked that before I started talking, and you probably would have said no.
I don't have a lot of questions about it. I could not justify paying money for it.
Yeah.
Like that's been true of Call of Duty since Infinite Warfare. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
I doubt I will ever play. Actually, I got World War II. And
yeah, that's right. You did play that.
Did not have any use for that in the end. So
that's the last one you really played, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you,
What was
Matt.
that, 3 years ago?
Yeah, and not much has changed since then. Mm-hmm. Like, if you played that, you still know what's going on with Call of Duty. And that's kind of my point.
Because it's been World War II, Black Ops, Cold War.
Black Ops Cold War was last year.
Yeah. And then this one.
Yeah.
And what was before World War II? Was that Infinite Warfare?
No.
When was Infinite Warfare?
I don't remember, Matt. Seriously.
2015? 2016?
They all bleed together because there's nothing distinctive about any of them. And this is another case of that. There's just nothing in the game that's unique or different.
Yeah. Like it really is true that like if you're gonna it's the thing. It's like ask me a video game trivia question or I die. I'm like, yeah, go for it. I mean, you ask me just name all the Call of Duties in order. Like I'm gonna lose somewhere around Ghosts.
I never do it. Yeah. It used to be easier when there were just 2 studios making them.
Yeah.
You'd have Black Ops and Modern Warfare.
Yeah, you just alternated for a while.
Alternated every.
Then you got Ghosts or the.
Well, when they bailed on Modern Warfare.
And then Sledgehammer. What was Sledgehammer's first one?
That was the futuristic one, wasn't it? Yeah.
What?
Infinite Warfare.
That was Infinity Ward.
Was that Infinity Ward?
Infinity
Ward. You're right. It was. That was our comeback from Ghosts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoops.
We chose the wrong project. But they're all bleeding together. And look, I do get it. There are young players out there who may find Vanguard to be their favorite Call of Duty ever because they've only played the last 3 or 4. But if you're like me, and most of you are, I know that, then you're going to think that this is just like the last few Call of Duties that you've played. It really sucks that, that adage of, another Call of Duty is unfortunately true.
Yeah.
It's disappointing, but...
Well, I mean, it's not like they haven't tried new things here and there, but they just always get knocked back down to the default because people don't like it.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Because, that's the thing is, you have to cater. You can't, people like us are more interested in, like the hardcore game groups and the critics and stuff are more interested in moving things forward or doing something different or da-da-da. But, the audience that makes these things super big hits just want another hit of what they got,
Yeah.
It's like how we forget that, it's like that time, and you don't see it. Most of the people I know don't talk about Call of Duty. Don't mention it's not a thing. It's not a factor in everyday life.
Nope.
But it's sort of like how we suddenly the charts suddenly revealed to us halfway through that one year that Wildlands was the best-selling game of the year.
We were like, what?
We didn't know anyone who played it. It's just there's points at which you just are out of touch with.
Yeah.
The millions and millions of people who make these games massive hits.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure if I go on Reddit or whatever, there's people on there saying, this is the best one ever. I don't know what you're talking about.
Venom made $1 billion.
Right. Yeah. But I've played them all, people, and I'm telling you, it's not good. Again, I think maybe lesser experienced people might be fooled into believing that this is a good Call of Duty. I would vehemently disagree. All right. It's time to move on. We're going to talk about, Matt, a game that may be now my most anticipated game of them all, save for maybe God of War Ragnarok.
Until he plays it.
Until I play it. And I don't know. I have hope again, Matt, that may not be the case with this game, and that game is called Elden Ring. Elden Ring showed 14 minutes of gameplay. When did they release that? Was it Thursday? We were doing
Thursday morning.
Yeah, when we were recording last week's show. It had launched in the morning. So it's only been out there for a few days. And holy moly, I am completely blown away by this. I was surprised that before we recorded today, Matt, you said you had not even watched the whole thing.
No, I got about halfway through it. I mean, part of it's because, I'm obviously going to play it. But also because, I don't find it particularly exciting, watching it, because it is a big conglomeration of everything they've learned, sort of put into an open world.
It really looks like every game they've made in one game.
Right, but
with an open world now.
Yeah, but it's just I see so many things I've already done that it's gonna take putting my hands on it to really get a lot of it and how it feels and whether, because they're doing a lot of cool stuff. You're seeing a lot of the more agility in this one. I love the magic horse that can jump 4,000 feet and stuff. It's
that's funny because that's one of the things that I think is really goofy and dumb. Is those pads that you run on that sends the horse flying 900
It is
miles
goofy and dumb, but I like it. I mean, you could argue that some of From's games could use a little more goofy and dumb.
That's true. They do take themselves maybe a little too seriously.
And they're not stars of the show when it comes to traversal and all that, and it looks like they're really focusing on that for this, so that's interesting.
I mean, they're huge upgrades, obviously,
but at the same time it's okay, so you in the combat and a lot of sort of the nitty gritty, I'm seeing I'm seeing Sekiro, I'm seeing Bloodborne, and obviously Souls, a lot of mixes of things like that. I would say this fight here with the dragon where he knocks it down and then gets a shot at his eye is very Sekiro. It's cool. I like all of that. But it's also I'm interested to see how this all sort of blends together and how it works well. But then you mix that with the open world stuff, and it's just okay, From's never done that before, but I sure have. Mm-hmm. So what's From going to do that's going to make this open world thing more interesting?
This game feels to me, Matt, like all their games in one mixed with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. This here feels a lot like Sekiro to me.
Yeah. Well, also what are they called? The killing blows or whatever from Sekiro.
Yeah.
That's all through this.
Yeah. The idea of doing something to a boss until it does something that makes it vulnerable and then you do the killing that's it's more involved than Sekiro. Sekiro's you're just wearing the stamina meter down until it opens you up. That is more of a almost traditional boss fight mechanic there, but it's still in terms of the closest comparison you have, it's that. Unless you want to talk about knocking things over in a boss fight, that's one of the other thing that's interesting in this footage is the enemies, even the really big ones, seem to be more reactive to your attacks. Like, you know, because one of the hallmarks of Souls games is that like they don't care that you're hitting them. You know, like unless you pull a really, you know, Bloodborne not so much. Bloodborne you can knock things on their ass, but like most of the time you're just sort of hacking away at this thing that barely recognizes you're there, and it's just like going through. But this one you can really like. You know, there's a thing later in it where he does like kind of the magic sort of projectile rain thing,
that crazy storm
thing. And it just like it basically stun locks the thing. Like, you know, and I can see in another Souls game maybe that thing just shrugging it off and walking out of it.
This shot right here, Matt, just beautiful.
There's a lot of Breath of the Wild.
Dude, it looks like an album cover from the 70s.
It does.
Actually, it looks like the background from Kiss Destroyer. The Kiss is like running up over that big rock hill, and what in the background is just like this crazy fantasy land.
To me, it looks like the cover of like one of those D&D module expansions, where like this is what you're supposed to picture in your head.
Yep.
And it's just like, no, I mean, I'm sure that's what you want me to think of, but we just drew it on graph paper, you know.
Yeah.
It looks really nice. You know, it does look really nice.
I mean, that's beautiful, man. And all those places, like, so they start showing like the map. And the map has all these locations, so those are real. This isn't just some bit map that like they're putting on the.
Yeah, it does look like you can go to all those places more or less.
Like, well, if you start looking through this map, all those locations line up in the map, so they're actually there in the world.
Yeah, and there's like the castle he's looking at is up there.
I have so many questions for you, Matt, because you are kind of the expert on these games, and I am not. Because I try to play
of the two of us, I wouldn't call myself an expert on the Souls games.
Yeah, between the two of us, you are definitely far more versed on them than I am. Let me put it that way. And I have a bunch of questions just from watching this, and I just took a ton of notes. But I think some of the stuff is pretty self-evident. Like, it's obviously an open-world game. You can summon your steed whenever you want, or dismiss the steed whenever you want. And it just does kind of this magical, like, appear and disappear thing. And then, of course, as we talked about, there are the crazy jump pads. Actually, I ended up figuring out what the word for those are somewhere. I'll get to that eventually. You gather map fragments to fill in the map. When they show the map there, you can see there are chunks that are missing, and they actually talk in the VO about how you need to find these fragments to fill it in. They don't really explain where you get the fragments from to fill it in. I'm guessing after you destroy enemies, maybe they drop them. I don't know. In the map screen, you can place beacons or markers wherever you want, and it looked like there was like 8 different markers, so you can be like, oh, here's this boss that I'm not ready to fight yet. I should stay away from here, or here's like a place for resources where I can gather resources. And then the beacons are what we saw earlier there in the open world, where you can just be like, put this beacon of light down that shines up, and then you can see it when you're out playing in the open world. I think that's really cool. The horse is obviously a big element. It's never been in a From Software game. This kind of traversal's never been in a From Software game. It's all brand new and a big deal. The horse itself, you can, as you see when you're fighting the dragon, you can fight boss battles on horseback. You can fight rank and file enemies on horseback. You can shoot your bow. You can cast magic from horseback. The horse can double jump. Did you see that? The horse has a double jump. You can also use your sword while you're on the back of the horse. Oh, and the launch pads are called the Spirit Spring launch pads. They're called Spirit Springs, I believe.
Sure, why not?
It's a little strange. Basically, what I've gathered from the combat, what it looks like to me, Matt, is that you have to break their stance first, and that's from Sekiro, and then you can land your critical attacks. In general, the combat looks most close to Sekiro to me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot from it, but like that, right, that what just happened there was more standard Souls. But certainly the close-in melee stuff is Sekiro informed, I would call it.
Yeah, because it feels like you can take a lot of enemies down with just one strike, which is very Sekiro-like. After, obviously, you've broken their stance.
They do a pretty good job of taking them down, with a bow was one shot. It doesn't feel like even the armored enemies are particularly invincible. When I guess you got a little extra army here.
Matt, this is what I think may make the game palatable to me, is the ability to spawn the spirits that will fight alongside you. I don't know how powerful they're going to be, how they're going to balance them, or what, but I'm seeing this ray of light, Matt, where I could focus upgrading that ability over other stuff, and it may make the game more manageable for people like me. Do you think that
maybe
possible?
I don't know. That would be out of character for From to just give you that. But
I know, but they have said
apparently fall damage isn't a thing anymore.
Yep, fall damage gone. That's a big deal. I mean, there's some shots in this footage where he falls like 200 yards, and just gets up like it's no big deal. And I'm hoping that that's a change that they've made for this game. Death blows from Sekiro have basically made it in. So once an enemy's down, you can do it. But also, they show you using it on a boss, on that dragon boss. So you down it, and you go up, and you go to use the death blow on the eye socket of the dragon, and then they cut. As soon as you plunge the sword in there, they don't show you if it actually does kill the dragon. Or maybe it's just how you finish off one of the dragon's health bars. I don't know. But that's something to think about. And formerly, death blows weren't they only a part of Dark Souls, and then didn't you have to parry or riposte in order to use them?
You could use that, or you had to stun them and then get around behind them. And you'd like backstab them.
Right, that's right. Okay.
And then in Bloodborne, it's the counter mechanic. It's the equivalent of parrying. You use the pistol when you're using your weapon one-handed. Use the pistol to interrupt their attack, and you'll get that.
That took me a while to wrap my head around.
And you run up to them and hit attack, and you do the.
That's right.
The attack thing.
I remember that. How do you feel about stealth in a From Software game? Because it looks like it might be a pretty big element.
If I know From Software, you don't have to do any of that if you don't want. You can build your character to not do that.
It seems like in this that may not be the case, although they showed like...
I promise you within a week, people will have figured out how to just do a brute force move.
Really?
Version. Like, there's no way in hell they're going to corral people on something. Like, people can do magic-only runs on things. People can do, bare, naked runs on things. I mean, it's not going to be that limiting.
Well, now they're showing them going into a dungeon. Mm-hmm. And the dungeons are where this game kind of turns into Dark Souls. Mm-hmm. Once you get in there, you have no map. You can't use a horse inside these dungeons, and they just seem to have more of the traditional... That would be
pretty funny.
What'd you say?
That'd be pretty funny.
With the horse inside? Yeah. But to me, other than the fact that you can jump, and there's like platforming in these, where you actually have to jump on platforms.
Yeah, that's an interesting element. None of these games have been particularly great outside of Sekiro as in terms of being platformers.
Yeah.
We'll see how they manage that. And a lot of why Sekiro works is because you have the grappling hook to kind of save you.
Right.
So I'm very curious how that's going to work out.
Yeah, you can jump in this. As you said, there's no fall damage, and there is platforming inside dungeons where there's like bottomless pits below. They've also brought back, and this is a little weird, the illusionary walls, which it means you have to go around the world like constantly like attacking walls with your sword, which could be really annoying. But then the weirdest thing to me is that they brought back the fog gates. Why? What is the point of those things?
Usually it's just so you know that you're about to go into something.
It's a warning,
dangerous.
I guess. Yeah. But they brought them back for this for whatever reason. And then some of the other small stuff that I picked up on that they actually provided context around.
Also because they're capitalizing fog there, I assume the fog means something.
That's true. That's a good point. And then there's these things called Sites of Grace. Some people have wondered if maybe they're the bonfires. But if you watch the footage in this, like when you use one, they emit like these rays of light that it looks like you're supposed to like follow to something. And I don't know what you would follow it to or anything like that or where they lead you. But they emit, once you activate one, like you can see light come out of them and then head off in a direction. And in some of the map shots that they show, you can see the Sites of Grace, and then they show the direction that the lights went. Like, it shows like a streak of the light showing like, okay, you can go to this point maybe and get, I don't know. Again, just spitballing based upon stuff that I saw in the trailer. And then maybe they're used for fast travel because there's another shot of the map where there's a button that you can hit that will show only the Sites of Grace on the map, which means that they're important in some way if you can filter the map to only show those, which makes me wonder if maybe they're for fast travel or something like that. Because so far they haven't really talked about fast travel in this game at all. They're like, we gave you a horse. The horse can jump 800 feet up into the air. You can summon the horse or discard the horse whenever you want to, but they haven't really talked about getting around the open world in other ways. And they talked about the beacons and the markers, so you can mark stuff to get back to it. But again, not a lot about fast travel. It looks like you absorb experience like other From Software games. There's just like, you don't have to go and collect it. It's like this gold dust that just comes out of enemies when you kill them, and it looks like it just naturally attracts to the character, and he just absorbs the experience.
Even when other things kill them.
Yeah, it looked that way. Yep. Because you saw when that dragon flew in there, did you notice it wiped out like 10 NPCs?
And then a bunch of gold flies at you.
And all the gold comes out, and it just absorbs into your character. I like that. That makes perfect sense to me, that you shouldn't have to go and collect experience points. And then they show on the map, or on the pause screen, they show the different stat categories, and there's 8 of them. And I think these are all pretty common to From's games. There's Vigor, there's Mind, there's Endurance, there's Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence, Faith, and Arcane. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Arcane only in Bloodborne? Is that the only From game where it appeared?
Maybe.
And it was weird too. Didn't it encompass like a bunch of weird stuff that seemed kind of unrelated?
Sort of. I mean, there's always kind of a weird stat that doesn't quite, like there's and the other ones had like poise or whatever, or not. That was determined by something else. There's always been kind of the one stat where you're like, what does that do? I don't know. I'm not putting any points in it. Or like blood tinge. In,
okay. So let's just pause this right here. So Matt, I talked earlier about summoning the spirits, and they've talked about how, you're going to be able to play co-op. That'll make it easier for people. And I had started to have a little bit of hope that this game wouldn't be like a lot of the other ones. And then there's this scene right here where you're just running along. Oh, dude comes out of nowhere, stabs you in the back.
Yeah. Well, now you know that.
But why? Why? It's like that.
You got to check your corners.
It's that one part at the beginning of Bloodborne where you just come around the corner and the dude's just there. Like, I just don't understand why they put this stuff in their games. Like, why? What's the purpose of that?
I'll bet you cash money.
I'm sure there's a tell or something.
Yeah, I mean, you see it's just.
But why?
You just see there's something over that left side of that doorway. You don't know what's there. You got to watch yourself.
I mean,
that's Dark Souls.
Putting that shot in this trailer is a dog whistle to fans.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh yeah.
It's them like, hey.
It's saying like, hey, once you go in the dungeons, is Dark Souls.
Maybe. Or it's
like, you're probably not going to get a lot of that in the open world because you don't have that much control over the environment. But
and I'll be honest with you, Matt, it's a dog whistle for people like me too, as a turnoff. I'm like, dude, really?
Well,
you're gonna cheap crap like that?
Well, if you were more careful when you walked in the room.
I don't want to tiptoe through every inch of a dungeon.
You don't have to tiptoe. As soon as you see that motion from behind you, you roll.
And don't you think it's funny that when they recorded it, they let themselves get stabbed in the back instead of like...
Oh, yeah. Well, because they want you to see that that's still an element. And remember, like, the character gets back up after that. It's not like it was an instant kill.
Yeah.
You're going to lose some life.
It doesn't really show like how much life you lose or whatever.
No, there's no real HUD
in this footage. There's no HUD.
You don't get to see what.
I think that may be intentional.
Probably intent. Yeah, they don't want you to see exactly the mechanics happening.
Yeah. Let's see. There's so much more to this. There's resources to collect for crafting. There's wild animals and birds.
There was a Dark Souls parry right there.
Yep. Yeah. Again, it's just funny how this is literally, and there's a flask.
Here's your Estus flask.
There's this last part of this is all dog whistles for fans. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just one thing after another where you're like, oh, you didn't think this was in it?
Yeah.
Here it
I mean,
is.
I think there's an element of me that just feels like this is only not called Dark Souls 4 because it's not in the same world.
Yeah.
Probably
right. Yeah.
Like, this feels like a pretty natural evolution of what From has done and learned.
Yep, there's the fog door.
Yeah, the fact that it's the same color as the experience you absorb indicates to me that it's some part of the lore somehow.
Yeah, that makes sense. But there's crafting, there's wild animals and birds to kill, there's orbs to collect. They show crafting arrows as like one of the only crafting scenes that they show. Those golden trees that you've seen, those are called Erd trees, E-R-D trees. They're all over the map, but I have no idea what they do. No clue. But they're on the map.
There has to be a sad sort of zombie-looking king, or it's not a From game.
Oh, this enemy right here is awesome, Matt. Like, this is kind of like the coup d'etat here at the end. Dude, the enemy designs, I love their art and their enemy designs.
Yeah, I mean, they always are very good at that.
Yes, they're amazing at it. Like, it's just this. they're just torture me. Like, everything about their games I love until I start to play them. It just drives me bonkers.
You guys stick with them more.
Oh. But anyway, the Erd trees, I can't figure out what they do.
I started playing through Bloodborne again for fun the last couple weeks.
That's funny. This boss fight is awesome, by the way. I think this is one where they show some co-op where you're fighting a boss together. And so he eventually gets this, like, or there you can spawn. You can use the enemy or the spirits that you spawn to fight bosses too, which again gives me hope. I'm like, okay, like at the very least, I can use the spirit to distract the boss, and then I can unload on the boss. Like, again, this game has given me hope, Matt. Do you think it's going to crush my hopes and dreams?
Yes.
Is it?
There's still going to be a stamina bar.
Do you think it's going to be tuned in such a way that it doesn't matter that you kind of have to use the spirits in order?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Unless they've changed their design philosophy, From is always aware of the tools you have at your dispense and expect you to use them.
Yeah.
This
interaction right here, like, well, most boss fights don't do that, where they'll pick up the character model and interact with the character model in a way like that. Like, man.
I mean, Souls games do. Like, that's pretty. Almost every major Souls boss has a way to basically grab you and do horrible amounts of damage to you. Where it's to the point where it's like, well, I'm done. Like, I'll just try this again.
Yeah. And then some of the connectivity stuff. They said there's going to be PvP and invasions. They confirmed that in this, but they don't show it at all. Instead, they show co-op. And I think a lot of the stuff maybe we'll be able to check out in the network technical test here soon. Not much of a story was revealed in this, other than that female character named, I think Melina was her name. Yeah. She has like a scar over her eye.
Melina or Melinda or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. And then the voiceover in this, I don't know what From Software does, how they record their voiceover or where they get their voice actors, but there's something about them. They're always like they're whispering or they're quiet or something, and they never sound like professional voice actors. They always sound like they just found some dude to just come in and record this long-winded like voiceover. It's in here. Like, I don't know how they do it, but even in the limited stuff that they show in this, it's there. Just like these very understated, almost mumbly like voiceovers. It's really weird. Like how all their games are like that.
Yeah, it goes back to Kingsfield.
It does,
really.
Actually. Yeah. Yep. And what else? I think
it kind of adds to because there's a dreamlike quality to it that they seem to intentionally go for.
It's like some of the people you talk to through the doors in Bloodborne. Yeah. The people in this sound just like it. Like, I am hyped, dude. I am really, really hyped for this game. Like, I love everything about it.
I think you need to live stream playing the network thing first for the first time.
I wonder if we'll be allowed to.
It's a good question.
Yeah, they may not let us. If they do, that might be a live stream worth people tuning in for.
Tune in to watch Shane turn into hatred in real time.
Or I could be completely pleasantly surprised. Like, I'm really hoping, Matt, that at least they've taken at least a couple steps in my direction.
Or you could be a Chinese jet pilot. But
yeah. That's true. Do you really think it's going to be the same and I'm going to be disappointed?
It sure looks the same. I mean, it looks like it has more Sekiro to it, but so maybe the stamina gauge will be...
Sekiro. I played Sekiro more than any other From
maybe
Software.
Stamina gauge will be a little more forgiving because of the nature of how the combat works and how fast some of it is. But I don't know. Again, it's hard to gauge that because we don't get to see the HUD.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know how close they're getting to running out of stamina every time they do those things.
Yep.
So.
That makes a big difference. Yeah. I got my fingers crossed, people. Like, this game it's like my game, dude. This game has been made for me. All the stuff I love, the genre I love, the art that I love, all of it. It's just got to be not impossible. It's like,
it's not impossible.
I know it's not. Obviously, it's just, I just get so frustrated playing their games. I get angry at them while I'm playing their games. And it's like, I've talked about this before, but I don't mind difficult games. I've played difficult games my whole life. I was reared on difficult games in the arcades. All the 16-bit games were impossible. I played through all those. I'm obviously fine with playing games like Ninja Gaiden. It's like that scene, that shot that they made a point of putting in the trailer of just getting stabbed in the back from some random dude hiding around a corner. Like, I don't understand it. I don't know why they do it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe that's just a one-off thing, and there's not a bunch of stuff like that. As long as it's not continual, like, that's okay.
I mean, I promise you will eventually learn what that looks like. When I see that doorway, I think there's something to the left.
How come?
Because I've played 5 of these games over and over again.
But what is it that tips you off?
Because if you look at, it's a room, and you can see that the room has room to the left. So when you're going through the doorway, there's something to the left, and you can't see what it is, which means there's a distinct possibility, because I have done this before in these games, that something is to the left. And so if I was playing that and was running up to that doorway, I would be suspicious automatically.
Yeah.
And I would probably walk in facing the left, or I would either step in and instantly dodge back, or I would step in and dodge forward to get away from the corner. Like, it's just something you learn in these games.
I mean, honestly, I've not spent enough time with them to get that sixth sense or whatever it is that you develop. I'll just be honest.
It's just an awareness of how they do level design.
Yeah.
Like, if they're like, when you see that doorway on the far right of the room, and there's all this room to the left, there's a reason they did that.
Why couldn't it just be a square room like every other video game, though?
Because they wanted to put an ambush there.
Right. But I mean, there are plenty of other games that design rooms that way.
Right, but you're not playing other games. You're playing Dark Souls.
I'm well aware of it. I am well aware of it. Yeah, Shneaky's like, getting angry is the worst mistake. You're right. It'll doom you in these games.
Shneaky also makes a good point. There's audio cues. Yes, you might hear them. Like,
that's true.
Almost all the creatures
like in
the Souls games make noise.
Yeah.
So you will often hear them breathing or something.
Yeah. It was interesting. So,
when you have a clear view, you have to watch out for the trap in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it's not there. But the one time you decide this must not be there, it's there.
It's there. It's funny. So I just tweeted after I watched all this and had got the show posted and everything. I just tweeted Elden Ring with the 2 eyeballs looking at it. And most of the responses I got were from people like me who were like, dude, it looks so awesome, but like, why do they have to make their game so inaccessible? So I'm definitely not alone out there on this, but at the same time, obviously there are plenty of fans who, will buy more than enough copies to make it profitable. So
at the very least, you'll probably be able to wander around the world and outrun things that are going to kill you or whatever. There's going to be probably more for you to do.
That's a good point.
Because otherwise, the Souls games are just dungeon crawls. If you can't get past a part of the dungeon, you have nothing left to do.
You'll never see the rest of it. Yeah.
Whereas this, at least, you'll be able to run around the world.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, actually. And that's something I want to do. I want to experience the worlds that they're creating more than I have in the past. So you're right. That is one thing at the very least that for me personally will be an upgrade for Elden Ring. But I am all over this game. I really can't wait for the network test. Like I said, I got an invite in my inbox today. I am very excited to check it out. I hope you guys are too. And I also hope that you listened to us. Was it 3 weeks ago when we told everybody to go sign up for the network test?
At least that was a while ago.
When the signups first went out, and we were like, "Yo, they went up today. Go sign up right now if you want to get in." Hopefully, you guys did that. Sneaky says, "I thought the same as Shane, but I was wrong. I completed Bloodborne twice a few weeks ago, even the dungeons." Yeah. All right, good for you.
Yeah, like I said, everyone's got their click moment where suddenly the Souls games make sense to them. For me, it was about halfway through Dark Souls 2.
Okay.
Having to review it, because one of the things, like I've said before, I didn't get Demon Souls at all when I played it. And Dark Souls I bounced off of. Dark Souls 2 I agreed to review for Rev 3 for Adam, because Cessler didn't have anyone else to do it.
I would love to watch Adam play Dark Souls.
Right. So he said, "You're the only person I know who can do this."
You want to watch.
So I play, and I remember being about halfway through Dark Souls 2, and this was a pre-release, a review copy, a guide. There were no guides, there was no help, there was no nothing.
Oh, that's brutal.
And I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. But I just kept going, and at some point something turned, and it all made sense, and it all worked.
I hope it happens for me.
When I finished Dark Souls 2 for review, and I was furious at it a lot. I had to walk away from it several times. But once it clicked and I got through the rest of the game, after I finished it, I instantly started another game of it.
Okay.
I didn't even, because normally I would just stop and start writing the review and be done with it. No, I started another game and playing it again from the beginning.
Build.
Same build more or less.
Okay.
But playing it again, knowing what I knew, it was a completely different game.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, that's what I was supposed to do here. I didn't speak the game's language.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to have a different point where I have some friends that figured it out instantly. Demon's Souls, instantly, they got it. Some people took to Bloodborne. Bloodborne is a different
It seemed like Bloodborne was the one that got a lot of people over the hump.
Bloodborne is really hard. I find Bloodborne very difficult.
The thing you were talking about earlier with the gun or the blunderbuss or whatever, that seemed very archaic and weird, that whole mechanic.
It can be if you don't understand quite why it works. But because the trick is everybody, early on you think, oh no, I have to memorize every enemy's animation so I know when to shoot them. But that's not true. What it isn't a particular part of each animation. It's when they start shifting their weight towards you, and you can eyeball that most of the time. Also, there's an old trick with it where basically you do 3 hits. You do 3 hits, and then automatically you fire the gun after that third hit, because usually with most, I'd say 70% of the time, if you have hit an enemy 3 times with a 3-hit combo, one hand combo, you are going to have goaded them into attacking you, and by the time you pull the pistol up and fire at the end of that combo, you're gonna stun them.
Just naturally,
it's fascinating. There's things you can do with or even Sekiro. Generally when you're fighting, you should always have your guard up, and when someone attacks you, you don't want to let the guard down and hit the guard when you think they're going to contact you. You hold that guard, and the timing you want on that is to let go of it and hit it again.
Okay.
Let go for a split second and hit it again when you think it's going to hit you, because that way, even if you miss the parry timing, you're still guarding.
Right.
Your guard should always be up. And that to me was an instinctual thing I always did from the beginning of that game. That's not something from the other Dark Souls games, really, unless you're really cowering behind the shield, which is a valid strategy. But I lost some of that from playing Bloodborne, because Bloodborne doesn't have a shield. Sekiro, for that, that was always an automatic thing I always did, and partly because of knowing Dark Souls, but also because fighting games, defense up. Sekiro uses a lot of fighting game tropes to some degree. Yeah. And I was surprised when I learned people I knew weren't doing that automatically, and I was like, well, why would they? Because that is a weird thing to learn to do, but to me it was instinctual. So you never know what these, there's an element of some of these games that just speak to me on a level that other people don't find intuitive. And there's a lot of other things about them that I don't find intuitive and have to look up and have to learn, like that 3-hit to the pistol thing. I saw that on a YouTube video, and I'm like, that's really smart. And then they said in the video, oh, by the way, the reason I'm doing this is because this. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I'm gonna start doing that. And that was very early on playing it, but it changed how I played the game.
Well, I'm hoping that because you can play this cooperatively, I can join up with somebody who can maybe show me the ropes a little bit and get me over the rough spots. Maybe you.
Maybe. Oh, and that was actually the other thing about Dark Souls 2 was when it went live, and I started playing the retail version, and I could summon other players to help me fight bosses, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to fight this boss. That was a really hard fight when I was playing it for review. Yeah. So I'm going to summon somebody, because you couldn't summon anybody during the review, because A, the network was very spotty, and B, no one was on. There were 50 people playing the game. It didn't work that way. And I'd summon someone to do that, and I go in and we just burn over. I was like, oh, that's no wonder people talk about summoning people all the time. That was easy. It was it's a totally different thing once you can summon someone. And
even just having the distraction of the boss not focusing on you 100%. Yeah,
that's a big deal. Yeah, and you hope they live so they get the reward. And stuff.
Of course.
And I became after that point, I became addicted to putting my sign down and getting summoned to help for boss fights. Because you get a good reward for it anyway. But it's fun to go in and help people get through stuff.
Well, you're just playing the really fun parts of the game.
Yeah,
without the slog. So anyway, there you go. That's Elden Ring. I put a lot of time into this segment. I really went in and dug into the footage. So I hope you guys really found it edifying. And I hope you feel like you learned something about Elden Ring that maybe you didn't get from just watching it. Hopefully that's what you figured out is the difference with GameFace. We are here to inform and give you guys the straight dope on the games that we cover. So put a lot of work into that. Hopefully you guys found it having some value. And the network test is coming up. The game launches in 2 months. Isn't that right?
End of February, yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 months, I guess. Well, actually 3. Yeah. But not far to go.
Yeah, 3.5.
Think we'll get much more from this before then?
I'd say we'll get at least one more thing that maybe details sort of the online features, how the co-op works, whether there's whether there's red players, like the invasions and stuff, if that's a thing.
Yeah. Yep. Game's looking hot, man. I think I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I'm thinking we got a PvE PvP feature coming at some point. There has to be.
Yeah, because there's a lot to explain there.
Yeah,
how that stuff's going to work.
And we still haven't even see the HUD.
That's true. Yeah, maybe they're hiding it so people like me don't see it.
Yeah, and I think we'll get something in the Game Awards.
You think?
Yeah, Keely's got a good relationship.
Oh, he's got the inside line on that game. That's right.
And I mean, he premiered Sekiro.
Right.
Back in the day. I mean, it was just the teaser that didn't tell you anything, but he's still got a good relationship with him.
He does, absolutely. All right, we got to move on.
We'll get something.
I talked way too long about Elden Ring, or we both did. And we got a bunch of topics to get to still. Up next, we're going to talk about Amy Hennig's new game. If you watch GameFace, you know Matt and I are huge fans of Amy, not just of her work while at Naughty Dog working on games like Uncharted, but her personally. She's a great person. One of those people in the industry that I would really like to work with at some point. Probably never will, but just creatively and personally, she's the type of people I like to work with. And she has a new studio called Skydance Media. Is that right? Skydance something.
Skydance is a media wing of Skydance production company, which is actually founded by two people who went to my high school.
Oh, really?
Much younger than me, but yeah.
That's crazy.
Their dad was the fifth richest person in production. So he founded a studio for them, basically.
Wow, must be nice.
Good work if he can get it.
Yeah, it sure is.
But yeah, Skydance. I think if you've been to the movies recently, you've seen their logo in front of the Top Gun trailer the 5,000 times they've shown it to you and refused to let you see the movie.
When does that come out?
Memorial Day next year.
Oh God!
Okay, it was supposed to be December.
What?
You've been getting delayed constantly because here's the secret.
It sucks.
No. Well, it might. I don't know. I don't care. I just want to see that plane footage in IMAX. It looks incredible.
Yeah.
Paramount can't afford a bomb right now. Paramount needs $1 billion from like Mission Impossible and Top Gun. And they need Jackass the movie to be a big hit too. Not maybe on that level of like a Top Gun or a Mission Impossible. They need it to be big. They need that revenue. And so they've seen all the even Jackass seems like a pretty obvious, post lockdown release. Like that seems like but they can't afford
any of them.
They can't afford for anything to get like pandemic money, Like how even we're
streaming services aren't going to work.
No, and we're talking about like box office right now. It's fine, it's doing. You see things like Eternals is doing really well, or like Venom did the number 2 of Fast and Furious. They all did good, but they did good for now.
Right,
they didn't do good for and the amount of money Paramount has spent on these movies, they need massive box office. So they've been delaying them to the point where they hope movie going is kind of back to normal by then.
Paramount also has like the worst streaming service of like them all. Like
well,
as far as OTT.
Well, the
apps.
concern is that Paramount is going to get bought. It looks like NBC Universal might be positioning themselves to cannibalize
Paramount has, back when I worked at Viacom, Paramount was a thorn in the side of Viacom.
Yeah.
Because it struggled to have hit movies and the risks were huge. It's like every film, $200 and some million, and
there's a strong possibility that if they show any weakness, they could get gobbled up by probably NBC, Comcast, or like maybe Warner Brothers. But Warner Brothers is kind of on the block in some ways too. Paramount is kind of fighting for their survival right now.
Wow.
So that's why that stuff keeps getting delayed.
Okay.
But Skydance is the production company involved in Top Gun. So this Skydance
thing is company related to them at all?
I can't tell.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I thought that she was just joining the interactive media wing of Skydance. If she founded a new company called Skydance,
I think she did.
That's different. I was under the impression that this was a video game development wing of Skydance.
Well,
pictures.
I'll say this: that could be possible because she finally announced what she's working on this week, and she is working on a brand new Marvel game. And at first, she didn't really say anything. She's just like, it's a Marvel game with heroes, plural, that you'll recognize. And then a writer who is working on her game and a bunch of other stuff went on Kevin Smith's podcast and said, I'm working on this Marvel game with Amy Hennig, who used to work at Naughty Dog. And everybody in the chat started guessing what the game was. And Kevin said, you guys guessed it already. Mm-hmm. And so the only guesses that had been made in the chat at that point were Fantastic Four. What were they? Fantastic Four and Daredevil and Ant-Man. Mm-hmm. And because
almost certainly Fantastic Four.
Well, right. Well, because she said heroes.
Also, the development schedule timeline would work out to just about when they're going to put that movie out.
Oh, really?
As a Fantastic Four is the last movie in Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4.
Oh.
So you're looking at 2024 for that, which would
that makes sense.
Would line up very well.
Because the writer also said on the podcast that he'd only been working on it for a year. Mm-hmm. So, which means he's probably been doing pre-pro and storyboarding and all that kind of stuff, which would line up with that 2024 release date. Although, I don't know, Amy's games don't always have a habit of coming out on time.
Yeah, but hopefully they can get somewhere with. I mean, it was this the confusion. I mean, look, the confusion of like what Star Wars game gets released was partly EA, but also partly like, we just lost the Patty Jenkins Star Wars movie to indefinite delay because they pushed that out. The good news is that it sounds like they're going to replace Rogue Squadron with an Old Republic movie.
Oh, really?
Possibly directed by Taika.
Oh.
It will not be based on KOTOR. It will not be based on anything. It will just take place in that era. Mm-hmm. But there is an Old Republic movie on the docket.
Oh,
whereas Rogue Squadron, while they have not said it's canceled, has been removed from the production schedule.
That's not encouraging.
No, but it's very bizarre how like the Star Wars movies keep losing directors. Like, make these people sign a contract to keep you in their schedule or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't know what's going on over there.
It is weird.
You'd think. I mean, Chloe Zhao has been talking about how she'd love to do a Star Wars movie. Let her do one.
Yeah. What do you make of this, Matt? First of all, what do you think of the Fantastic Four? I feel like Fantastic Four is like the B tier of Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, Fantastic.
That makes sense.
Fantastic Four is one of the toughest properties to know what to do with of the. I mean, they are A-list in terms of classic Marvel. What put Marvel on the map? Fantastic Four was the breakout hit along with Spider-Man. There's a reason they and Spider-Man crossed over very, very early. I think the trick with Fantastic Four is finding a way to make them not boring. Chloe Zhao did make Eternals, which was not bad. It was very good. Middle of the pack, but very good.
Oh, wait, did you like Eternals?
I did.
Seems like everyone's split on that film.
It is a little split, but it's not flawless, but it's definitely like upper middle of the Marvel pack, I would say. Mm-hmm. I certainly know more about all 10 damn characters than I expected to. I can tell you what every Eternal liked and disliked or wants or what their character arc is about versus just about anybody in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, and Zack Snyder had 3 movies to figure that out. So
Fantastic Four's characters just seem boring.
They can be. They work. Fantastic Four works better as part of the universe.
Yeah.
And the big thing with Fantastic Four is it gives you Doctor Doom.
Right.
Doctor Doom in the MCU is the reason to do Fantastic Four.
I mean, Doctor Doom is one of the best characters in the MCU, and he has been completely MIA through all of this.
Because
madness.
he's Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Like he's he's part of the Fantastic Four license. They only recently got back because they bought Fox.
It's weird that he's tied in there because he was a linchpin of the Secret Wars. He's been in Marvel stuff that wasn't just Fantastic Four before.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He was part of the Fantastic Four license that Fox held, so they couldn't use him.
Oh, I see.
The Fantastic
Four. Funny how they have character XYZ is part of this.
They're all part
of
this world or that part. Yeah. That was just how they parceled out the licenses in the '90s to keep the company alive. So that's why Sony has Spider-Man. It's why Universal had the distribution rights to Hulk until recently. It's why. For God's sake, somebody had the rights to Man-Thing of all. They sold everything off. Getting them all back was a minor miracle. But now that they bought Fox, they have Fantastic Four and X-Men back.
Right.
I think Fantastic Four included. It was real weird. It had the Fantastic Four. It had Doom, Annihilus, the Negative Zone, Silver Surfer, Galactus. Marvel could use the Skrulls.
But Galactus was in that?
Galactus is part of the Fantastic Four, yeah.
Wow.
They could use the Skrulls, but they could not use Super Skrull, which is the Skrull that has the powers of the Fantastic Four. Marvel could use the Watchers, which is why they had that post-credit sequence with Stan Lee as a Watcher at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
But they could not use Uatu, the Watcher, who was the main Watcher from the Fantastic Four stories, until they got that back, and that's who Jeffrey Wright plays in the What If series.
Wow.
So there was some real nitty-gritty stuff in there.
Yeah.
There was the weird sharing thing where where Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were part of the Avengers and the X-Men license. So that's why Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were both in the Fox X-Men films and the Marvel Studios Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
And why Quicksilver got killed off in Marvel to have Scarlet Witch being the main character, and Quicksilver was the main character in the X-Men movies, and Scarlet Witch was his little sister, too young to be part of the action.
Oh, right.
So because basically they picked one for each, and then they did that way. So yeah, the horse trading that was involved in getting all that done is hilarious, but now it's done so they can do a Fantastic Four movie. I've always thought, I don't have any reason to think they do this, I've always thought if I was going to do a Fantastic Four movie in the MCU, I would have had them be superheroes in the 60s.
Huh.
Like the Fantastic Four stuff would have happened. They go to space, they come back, they got powers. They're sort of a famous Fantastic Family
I forgot,
team.
Actually, that's how they got their powers.
Cosmic rays.
Yeah, I forgot that.
Fantastic Family kind of thing. They fight Doctor Doom, whatever. But then Reed thinks does something with some portal multidimensional thing and jumps through, and they disappear. They disappeared in 1962, and no one's ever seen them again because they were trapped in this multiverse thing, sort of like Michelle Pfeiffer from the Ant-Man movies.
Oh yeah.
In the quantum, but they're in the multiverse. And then when Loki breaks the multiverse and the multiverse becomes a whole thing, starting with Spider-Man, all of a sudden they find a way back because the multiverse is more open and there's more, and they come back to modern days, but they're 1960s superheroes. So it's like that fish out of water sort of thing where they don't know how anything works anymore, and they're sort of like these cheesy old school fat superheroes. And everyone's just like, what is wrong with these people? And then as they become, no, the Fantastic Four is back, this super isolated country in Eastern Europe called Latveria, who's been ruled for years and years by this mysterious Victor Von Doom, suddenly he's like, Richards, and he comes back out, and that's how Dr. Doom's always been there in the MCU. He just hasn't been active because the man he hates the most in the universe has been gone, and he won. But now Richards is back, so Doom becomes prominent again, and that's how Doom gets active in the Marvel Universe again. Huh. That would be what I'd do. You're welcome. Take that, Disney. Just go ahead and run with that. Or call me. Hey.
The only details we have on this game so far is that it's a narrative-driven, blockbuster action-adventure game that features Marvel characters, but is not connected with the movies or any other games.
Right. So I'm still saying, a Fantastic Four game is a bold move.
Yeah.
Because Fantastic Four is a hard sell.
Yeah. I remember when the last film came out. Gosh, what was that now? How many years ago was that? 12, 13 years, maybe? I remember they were skywriting the four in the sky here in L.A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing about Fantastic Four would be nice to have in a shared universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe or video games or whatever, because of how you can have you can have Spider-Man and Human Torch do stuff together because they're fun when they team up and they're friends and they give each other shit. It's like the Thing fighting the Hulk is a fun team up kind of thing. Reed Richards is an asshole. Reed is a horrible person who does terrible things, and it's fun to point that out. Sue should
Good luck with that one.
Sue should probably leave Reed and have her own life.
That sounds like something Amy would want to make.
She's too good for Reed Richards. I'm just saying.
What do you think about Amy tackling this stuff? Do you think she's a good person to do it?
Yeah, I think she's a comic nerd. She knows. I'm sure she's got tons of stories in her head that she's wanted to tell forever. And whatever this is, my secret hope would be that it would be maybe Daredevil or X-Men or something. I would prefer to see her take on those. Yeah. Fantastic Four feels like. And this is me saying, as speaking as someone who is not a huge Fantastic Four fan, to me, Fantastic Four feels like a dead end. Fantastic Four, it could be different. Look, the MCU has made people care about weirder characters than Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. The fact that Guardians of the Galaxy is a household name now is ridiculous. I never thought that way. So if they can do that with Fantastic Four, more power to them. So, obviously it's not based on the movies, but certainly Marvel tries to do the synergy thing where they put out stuff related to the characters who have a movie currently. They're putting out Eternals stuff and various other, their mobile games and stuff. Eternals are all over it, that kind of thing. So they, the idea that they are going to try a Fantastic Four game, not terrible. And also, if you're coming off the back of that Guardians of the Galaxy game, you have figured out the formula to do a team-based action game. Yeah. So
I've also been
translating that to Fantastic Four would not be super difficult.
It's been great to see that a lot of people that took our recommendations and bought Guardians of the Galaxy really like it. Mm-hmm. It's part of my job. It makes me feel really good when I recommend games that people end up liking.
Oh yeah.
It's really rewarding.
And look, I just want to play another game Amy Hennig wrote.
Yeah.
We haven't got one of those since.
And she's got someone to help her, so she's not doing all the heavy lifting.
We haven't got one of those since Uncharted 3.
Yeah.
And they're also. I mean, she also worked on Forspoken,
right?
Which is coming before that, obviously. But her work is done on that because she's a writer, and you don't need to stick around that long as a writer. So yeah, I wish we'd gotten a Star Wars game out of her, but that wasn't her choice. So here we are.
She tried.
She did.
That's all you can ask. Yep. But as Matt said, this game probably isn't coming until like 2024.
Yeah, we got a ways to wait.
Away. Yeah, but it's exciting to see her back in the saddle with a big budget. Sounds like
and
a good
property,
team.
a property worth her time.
Yep. And that we all care about as well. Maybe not as much as we would hope. Maybe it's not Fantastic Four.
Could be something else. I mean, but what again, whatever Amy thinks is worth her writing time, I'm going to give a try.
Yeah,
at the very least.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So we'll definitely have more updates on that on GameFace as we get more information. My guess is we don't see anything until E3 of next year. That's my guess.
At the earliest.
Yeah. Or maybe the Game Awards next year.
Yeah. Or whenever Kevin Smith decides to spill the beans again on a podcast to the point that they're like, well, we might as well show something now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, yep. Okay.
You never know.
We'll see.
Speaking of comic book games, did you see the leaked concept art yesterday from the Batman game that never happened?
No, I didn't.
Some guys, as an artist, concept artist, and they leaked some stuff that was basically, it looks like it's from the WB Montreal Arkham sequel. It's Damian as an adult dressed in the Batman Beyond, a version of the Batman Beyond suit, and then with like a fancy motorcycle with the red and black, and then there's a Bruce, like old Bruce, like Bruce with like a giant gray Viking beard, old Bruce
Kratos beard.
Yeah, in the bat armor.
Wow.
It's just stuff that never happened because instead they just
it's canceled for sure.
Oh yeah. So instead they're going to do Gotham Knights.
That sounds like
which Damien didn't even get into. So
interesting. Okay.
Damien's going to be DLC. It's going to be Damien loadable content.
Oh.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I promise.
All right. It's time to move on. Nintendo really spilled the beans this week. It released all kinds of data on Switch and its other platforms that it basically held close to its chest for a long time. It was financial reporting time, but that still doesn't add up because Nintendo's reported financials a ton of times and has never given up all this information. But for whatever reason, it decided this time it wanted to give up the ghost, and did it ever give up the ghost? And the big news out of all of the data is that the Switch is about to overtake the Wii for sales, and do it in a lot less time as far as the amount of time on the market. Because the Wii, they kept selling that for 7 years probably. They created that cheaper version that took out the Wi-Fi and stuff. And
when did the Wii U launch? It was like 2011,
12, I think it was.
12. Can't remember.
Yeah, can't either. But regardless, the Switch is coming up on the Wii, and it released a bunch of other information too. Like the Switch's median age is in the low 20s, and they released a chart, and I'll try to visualize it for you. It was like, so it was like age along the bottom, and then like how many people at that age group are actually buying or playing it. Mm-hmm. And the like 0 to like 15 was like nobody. And then it slowly starts ramping up after 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then 20, there's this big spike. And then from 20 on older, the curve goes down gradually. Which, you look at that, you're like, okay, 20 may not even actually be the median. 20 is just kind of where the spike happens, and it cascades down from there. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that data?
I mean, why would they lie about it?
Perception?
That's illegal, though, so...
Is it?
If they're talking to shareholders, yeah.
Do you think maybe the owners are lying?
Owners of...
the Switch.
I mean, you can only do research as best you can.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd lie about your age.
I'm just wondering where they're getting the data. Maybe they're getting the data from people signing up with their consoles, and what if the kids are lying and saying they're 18 or older so that there's not like... I don't know, M-rated game locks or
I don't know. Like maybe might be the research might be coming from like who bought it. And like maybe you might be buying it for a younger kid, and the kid doesn't get their 7-year-old that gets a Switch doesn't get to be part of that data, and there's the 28-year-old parent who bought it for them does, that kind of thing. I don't know.
I was pleasantly surprised to see that their demo was much older than I had guessed that it would be. And so, just because I'm a journalist, I just start trying to poke holes in stuff to see if things don't add up. But maybe they are adding up. Maybe that is the Switch demographic now, or the Nintendo demographic. They also announced that there are now 6,700 third-party games on Switch. That's insane.
Yeah, well, if you look at the eShop, it's mostly shovelware mobile crap. So I believe that.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. 6,700. Yeah. Holy crap, that's a lot of crap to weed
That's
through.
a lot of useless shit.
It really is. And then the final piece of data they
sometimes
gave
I scroll, even when like a recent game that's about to come out or it came out and I want to buy, like I'll scroll through that. I'm like, oh my god, you got to scroll through pages and pages of complete garbage to find these things.
It's not just Nintendo. I mean, it's all the storefronts are like
it's
that.
more and more, but it's like I got to go down like 3 rows on Xbox to find the thing that's coming out next week that I want to pre-order. Yeah. Whereas like with Switch, like to go get Shin Megami Tensei a pre-order like last week, I had to go through so much crap.
And then the other part,
some of it's borderline porn. Like it's bizarre. It's really bizarre weird. The stuff that Nintendo allows us to
stop anything. From
no, you remember when they wouldn't let you put crosses in a game?
Yeah, or they changed blood to green all the time. Yeah, it's weird, but. You're right. It's harder to find stuff on Switch, and it's made worse by how slow and sluggish the eShop is when you try to use it on a Switch. Every page just like it's like using the internet in like 1996 on like AOL or whatever. You're watching images like pop up. And that's probably not too far from the truth as far as Nintendo's online service. Speaking of which, Nintendo now has 32 million subscribers of Nintendo Online.
Not bad.
That's real good, I think, for what they're offering, which isn't much, even with the improvements that they've made recently, if you want to call them improvements. If you call more than doubling the price of it for some N64 and Genesis games an improvement, then they're at 32 million subscribers. And so I felt like this was a good inflection point, Matt, to have a discussion on what is the greatest Nintendo console of all time. Now, it's not just about sales, although generally, and I think we're seeing this bearing out in this data, is that if you sell a lot, then you end up having a lot more games and a lot more choice in software, and generally, you probably would assume you'd end up with more great games on a platform that has sold a ton. However, one might argue that the Wii is the counter-argument to that, because the Wii had a huge install base, and in my opinion, for the size of the install base, maybe the worst ever software lineup for a console that had sold that much. And just to quickly run through the numbers for Nintendo, and I am not including their handhelds in this discussion as far as best console, but
you said console, since handhelds aren't console.
Yeah, but I am going to go through the sales for their handhelds as well.
Because if you include handhelds, it's the DS. Right. Then you're done.
Well, the DS,
it's just it ends the discussion
immediately because the DS sold 154 million,
and the DS library is just especially when you consider you can play GBA on it.
Right,
there's nothing else touches it.
The only platform that sold better than the DS is the PlayStation 2. That's it. 154 million. We'll start from the bottom though. Worst selling ever is the Wii U. How many do you think they ended up selling?
Wasn't that like 7 or 8 million?
It was more than that. It was 13.5 million. There's only 13 million Wii U's in the world.
Don't break.
don't lose yours. Yeah. Like, seriously, those might be really hard to find in like 20 years.
Sometimes I think about getting like a bag, but I'm like, that would basically just be, that's why I keep saying I want stuff to make it off the Wii U onto the Switch, because I don't want to have any reason I need to keep a Wii U.
Yeah.
You know? Like, get Xenoblade Chronicles X off that thing, and I'm pretty much good.
Wii U, worst selling Nintendo console of all time. Unless you count the Virtual Boy.
If there's another Wii U game I would want to save off that, I can't think of it.
Yeah, they've done it.
The other one I would have said was Fatal Frame, and we just got that. Also, it's not that good and probably wasn't worth saving, but at least it's not stuck on that console anymore.
Yep.
Really, you just need Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I'm pretty okay junking my Wii U.
Pretty much forgettable. So Wii U at 13.5 million. Worst selling Nintendo console of all time. No one's surprised at that, I don't think. GameCube, 22 million. Nintendo 64, 33 million. Super Nintendo, only 49 million. For some reason, I thought it sold better than that.
It was a smaller industry then.
Yep. NES, 61 million. 3DS, 75 million. GBA, 81 million. Switch, 92.8 million. In 5 years, it's done 92.8 million.
I wonder how many of those were replacements.
I don't know. The Wii ended up doing, when it's all said and done, 101 million. So Switch will
definitely going to get there.
Switch will pass Wii by the holiday season.
Yeah.
When this holiday season's over, Switch will be selling better than the Wii did. And then the Game Boy / Game Boy Color, the combo did 118 million. And then, as we said, the DS, 154 million. So I think it's safe to say Switch is going to pass the Wii to be the best-selling Nintendo console of all time. Mm-hmm. Is it the best Nintendo console of all time?
No.
It's not.
No.
What do you think is?
I would go back for myself. I would go back and forth between the Super Nintendo and the GameCube. Both of those had more stuff that I liked a lot and would consider like all-time classics than what the Switch has provided so far.
Really? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
The GameCube is one of my favorites actually. Just it had great stuff. It was unsung in terms of how powerful it was for the time. Image quality was second to none in that generation. If you had the component cables, and I still have most of my old systems hooked up, and I go back and play them once in a while. Like the GameCube stuff holds up, like all of it. Like there's very few GameCube games I've loaded up and not felt like that they held up as well as most anything of that time.
I just don't think that the quantity is there.
I don't think the quantity is there on a Switch.
I do, because think about all Nintendo's first-party properties. Mm-hmm. We've gotten something for every one of them.
Oh, sure, but I don't like most of them. That's the problem. Like, we're talking just sheer library, like choosability, sure. But in terms of what I like I haven't liked many of the updates of the classic properties on the Switch. Not fully. I mean, the only one I really fully embraced, I would say, would have been, I guess, Fire Emblem Three Houses. I liked a lot. Breath of the Wild was good, but I didn't think it was great. I did not like Super Mario Odyssey hardly at all. I certainly have a very middle-of-the-road opinion on Metroid Dread, which breaks my heart, but here we are.
Yeah. That's definitely a huge disappointment for me.
Yeah. Whereas, GameCube, I've got both Rogue Squadrons. I don't like Mario Sunshine, but that's really only dog of the group. Wind Waker's great. Twilight Princess is great. And it's better on the GameCube. What was the Fire Emblems? Fire Emblem was great on that. That stupid Star Fox Rare game's great. In spite of itself, almost. It has a lot of weird one-off stuff. It had Resident Evil 4 before anyone else. Mm-hmm. GameCube is hard to touch. Super Nintendo might touch it just in terms of me being the right age to find nostalgia and all those things. ActRaiser, Super Metroid, Mario World, there's a pantheon of games on Super Nintendo. But both of those systems stand head and shoulders above the Switch right now. The Switch obviously isn't done. We'll see what the dust settles on. But yeah, the Switch is not in the same league as those two. Although it might be by the end of its life. But right now, I'd put Switch in the kind of the third or fourth position.
Wow, I honestly do think Switch is Nintendo's best console. I have liked those games. I'd agree with you. I didn't like Breath of the Wild as much as everybody else. I didn't think it was the game of forever. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really freaking good, but I didn't think it was 9.5 out of 10 good.
Right.
There's blatant flaws that a lot of people overlooked when they were evaluating that game.
It's also just not what I want out of a Zelda game. I think like I've said before, I think Breath of the Wild is a great trial run of what an overworld should be in an open world Zelda game, but they forgot to put a Zelda game in it.
Look, and I'm
hoping Breath of the Wild 2 might be that.
Right. I will say this too, that when I say that I think Switch is Nintendo's best console, I am assuming that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be much better than the first Breath of the Wild.
I would think it would be, but is it going to be better than Link to the Past? Nah.
I don't know.
Nah.
I don't know.
I have a hard time believing that. Link to the Past and Ocarina are very hard to touch.
Well, Ocarina, it's still a great game, but if you go back and play it now, it's certainly not timeless. Yeah. I think a lot of my reverence for Ocarina of Time is that it was the first to do so many things. And
I think it's
now,
more
obviously,
timeless
it's
than-
been lifted over and over.
I think it's still more timeless than most of the other 3D Zeldas. Wind Waker still does pretty well, but Wind Waker is...
There's some problems with that game, too.
Oh, yeah.
But I do like Super Mario Odyssey. I think it's an amazing game. I never 100%ed it, but dude, it's like 4 times the size of any other 3D Mario game. I don't think there's any way I was going to ever 100% that game, like no matter what. And I do think it's great. And
Well,
I
it's
really
also
enjoy it.
just bloated in that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like, you don't appreciate each moon the way you appreciate each star in, like, Super Mario 64.
No,
There's just
or
too
Galaxy.
Or right.
Like,
yeah.
I'll be shocked if they ever top Galaxy and Galaxy 2. That is the pinnacle of 3D Mario for me.
Probably. Because once you go back to not doing the gravity stuff, you're taking a step back.
Yeah, but also like...
Just
But also, I
organically.
think Galaxy recognizes that each star has to be meaningful.
Yeah,
Like,
it remembers that.
Yeah, you have to go through, because that's the thing about what Mario 64 did that Sunshine does somewhat and Galaxy does better, is that each star is its own path through the level.
Right.
Like, you're basically playing 6 levels in one.
Instead of
on those
going
games.
through one path and getting 5 stars.
Yeah, right. Whereas Odyssey is just throwing moons at you like
Yeah.
it's going out of style, and
I
like
hear
you end up with moon inflation.
No, you're right.
So,
I hear you.
and like at the end of this long thing, I get the same thing I got from butt stomping a lump of sand on the beach at the beginning of what I was doing in this level. So I'm just like, well, what? At best you get a three pack, and it's just like, and it takes so many moons to move on to the next. Or do whatever you need to do. It just feels. It doesn't feel as meaningful.
Yeah. I just start. So those 2 games I like more than you, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And I am assuming that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be even better than the first Breath of the Wild. Then you start looking at all its other IP. Like, I know a lot of people may say Melee is the best Smash Brothers game, but really, this is probably the best Smash Brothers game. There's so many characters and crossovers and stages, and the DLC has just been poured on and poured on. It legitimately is probably the best Smash Brothers. We haven't got a wave race. We haven't got like a 1080 snowboarding yet or anything like that on Switch. So that's missing. We haven't got a Punch-Out on Switch yet either.
No.
So there's some IP that's still missing there. But you start looking at some of their other stuff like Kirby and things like Kirby's about to get his like 5th game.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't
Switch.
judge any of them by Kirby. Kirby's everywhere.
But he wasn't though. Like, he got 1 game on N64, the Crystal Shards. Like, a lot of Nintendo has managed to release a lot more games for Switch because they unified, their handheld and their console team, so they're just making stuff for one platform now.
I just don't. I think about the Switch and I have to really dig for stuff I truly enjoyed.
I like things like Astral Chain. You didn't like that,
I
but
didn't
I
like
did.
Astral Chain.
Yeah.
I didn't like No More Heroes 3. I liked it okay, but it didn't redeem the series for me very well. It's better than 2.
It has the best Animal Crossing.
Yeah, but I ran out of patience with that.
Metroid Prime is coming. Who knows if it's going to be
We'll
great.
see. That could raise some profile there.
And I start thinking about just the hardware itself and how it is a hybrid and how that stuff works very well. I feel like Nintendo, more than any other console, finally started figuring out online play. Like, we still can't chat, but the online play is seamless and better on Switch than it ever was.
They certainly figured out how to charge us for it.
Yeah. I mean, it was only $20 a year just to play online.
It broke the virtual console.
They did. That's a good point.
Like, there's not a lot about the Switch that is useful to me in terms of that.
Interesting.
I don't use the handheld feature at all. The Joy-Cons are a dumb gimmick, and I hate them, and I've never used them once I got the Pro Controller. The Switch is a bunch of useless extra garbage that I would rather just buy a straight like I said, if they did a Switch Pro that did not do Switch stuff, it didn't become a handheld thing, it was just a more powerful thing that ran the same games, I would buy that in a heartbeat and get rid of that Switch like that. I know you probably wouldn't be able to call it Switch because it wouldn't switch from it. Maybe you can call it Switch because it switches from 4K to 1080p. I don't know.
They just have a big switch on the front of it that you flip.
Yeah. 4. I don't know.
That's funny.
But a lot of what the Switch, though, the appeal of the Switch is not appealing to me. So, like, to me, the Switch is just like, it might be, it's probably going to be in the best selling. It's probably going to blah, 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 blah. Doesn't do me any good.
I think I just look at it and I've spent more time playing it than Super Nintendo, maybe more. But otherwise, I've spent more time playing my Switch than any other Nintendo console.
I mean, definitely not true for me. Super Nintendo GameCube got more time out of me for sure. Even by
for me,
this point.
GameCube, like I played all the third-party stuff on the other platforms, so I only played Nintendo's first-party stuff.
Same on Switch. Like
Yeah.
I forget I have a Switch.
Yeah, but
like I forget
Switch,
which input it is on my TV
but
until they put something out.
Has struck more exclusive deals with third parties on Switch than it has for other platforms. Like we had the Capcom 5 on GameCube, but
That turned out to be 3.
right,
And then they went to
and
other
then
systems
to none
anyway.
because they all ended up getting released somewhere else. But and that's pretty much it. I mean, it had decent third-party support, just not exclusive third-party.
A fair number of those third-party stuff. Some of it was better than it was on other platforms.
Not much.
Not
Most
much.
of it was
unusual.
worse. Yeah.
But same thing with what was it? PS3.
Yeah.
PS3 was just an exclusive box. I think the only multi-platform game that runs better on the PS3 than on the 360 is Burnout Paradise.
Yeah.
The sparks are better.
Chat, we want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think is the best Nintendo console of all time? I'm interested to hear everyone's takes on this. And don't jump in if you hate Nintendo and you don't like any of them. Only people who actually care and know something.
That brings up
Nintendo.
Xenoblade. That's a good point. The Xenoblade on Switch is garbage, and I hate it. The Xenoblade I love on Switch is a remaster of the Wii one.
No,
so that
no,
doesn't
guys,
count.
no handhelds, just consoles. I saw W Nerd said Nintendo DS.
Wii U.
Bachby says Wii U. I think he's just joking. At least I hope he's just joking. Because I think we've learned, if anything, it only took Nintendo, about 18 months to get everything worthwhile from the Wii U over to the Switch.
Yeah, there's not much left.
Samurai, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Switch, SNES, 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 Switch, GameCube, SNES, 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 SNES. W Nerd is just messing around. He keeps, now it's the Virtual Boy. OCD, Switch. These people saying Virtual Boy. No, we didn't say the worst Nintendo console of all time. Erebus Jones says N64. Wow. Bachby says he's not joking. He says he loved his Wii U. Got it the same year I got my PS4 and Xbox One. He says he played it more the first year than those two. Maybe
PS4 because there wasn't much on PS4 first year.
Matto Baxter definitely Switch. E-Theme and Switch. Barry Lomax N64. Justin Horman says between NES and GameCube. Have to say SNES is probably the best though. Tiny2K says Wii gets bashed, but I had a lot of fun with it because my wife would actually play games. That's a good point too. There's an argument for the Wii. NES from Norx Nessie. Wii U is solid minority games. There is no right answer. It's preference from Schneeky. JM Rain says Switch. There's an argument for the Wii, I believe. I don't think for people like us there's an argument, but I think if you take us out of the equation, that
I
there
think
might
a
be
lot
an
of people
argument for it.
would have that to say.
So I would like to see that same curve that they showed for Switch. I'd like to see what it was for Wii.
I mean, I've always had my my belief that roughly half of the Wiis ever sold never played anything but Wii Play and Wii Sports.
I'd agree with that. I fully believe it. But you got to realize, Switches aren't in nursing homes. The Wii hit this part of the market.
Well, the Wii was also more affordable.
Right.
The Switch is overpriced for what it is.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Especially
it's
now.
$50 less than one of the Series S.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
especially
ridiculous.
now.
Yeah.
The pricing's really...
The only real advantage of the OLED Switch is that you can find it.
They're going to drop the price soon, though. If you've listened to Pachter for the last 2 years, he said that when they sell less than 20 million in a year, that's when the price will drop. And they've only sold 8 million from April to now. So they're going to come in way under 20 million for the year, which means here comes the price cuts, finally, after all this time. And maybe that will reinvigorate it, but because they've released the Lite and now the OLED, I don't feel like the impact of, releasing or lowering the price or any of that other stuff is going to be as impactful as it normally would be. So I could see an argument for the Wii, even though it's way down the list for me personally. I could see in an objective list it maybe makes sense, but its attach rate for its software was so terrible, and I think its software lineup overall was pretty terrible. Most of the games, other than the Galaxy games, which were sublime.
Yeah, Galaxy games.
But the Zelda, those games weren't good on there.
No.
It's really hard to think of great
the Fire
games.
Emblem was good.
Yep. But otherwise, there's not a lot, man.
All right, if you don't hate the waggle like I do, the Metroid Prime trilogy being converted entirely into motion controls is probably good for you.
But otherwise,
it certainly wouldn't. It doesn't enter the conversation for me.
Yeah, me personally.
I mean, GameCube doesn't have a hugely broad library, but I can come up with like 9 or 10 9 out of 10s for you on that thing. Like that still play well. That still look pretty good. Like there's a sweet spot there of what they were achieving with the look and the graphics that I don't think it's sometimes that I look at it, I'm just like, God, Switch isn't that far beyond it in some cases.
Yeah. I think if I let nostalgia take over, I would say it's Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And I think if I think realistically, it's Switch.
Yeah, Switch is just not part of the competition for me. To me, it's like
you have not really liked it the whole time.
It's just and a lot of the stuff that even the high profile stuff I think has been a disappointment to me. Like there are very few Switch games that I can really look at and say like I really like that. Mm-hmm. That was a great game, and one of them is Xenoblade Definitive Edition, which doesn't count.
Which doesn't count.
Yeah. Everything's been kind of okay for the most part, except like Breath of the Wild's real good. I hope Metroid Prime 4 is really good. But it's got, Metroid Prime 1 is still great. Like, and it still looks great. It's got its work cut out to beat its own predecessor from like almost 20 years ago. I can go back and forth with GameCube and Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo's got, the classic main Mario. Some of those things established what those Nintendo franchises were going to look like for the rest of time. F-Zero, Final Fantasy VI, which is still the best Final Fantasy game, as far as I'm concerned. ActRaiser, which we've just been over with that remake. Honestly, the remake, while it has a lot of cool improvements and is probably a better game, it still struggles to hit harder than that Super Nintendo game did back in the day when you heard orchestral music for the first time coming out of a cartridge machine.
That's an advantage that the older platforms are always going to have, is the first. It's like we're
talking
about Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the perfect encapsulation of that. It did so many things for the first time that you're always going to have kind of that soft spot for it. I think that's why the SNES for me is way up there.
Yeah, definitely. And like it was where Street Fighter 2 was at home for the first time. It was it had Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which you could play and like be like, oh, this is as good as playing in the arcade, except I don't have to throw a quarter in it every time. Like there's a lot of that where like games. It was one of the first generations, along with the Genesis, but it was like. The arcade was finally coming home in a way that it just hadn't before.
It's funny watching this Wii U promo. And
you forget
like, wait, what happened to all this stuff?
Right.
Like where?
You forget how.
That
never happened.
Thing where you had the golf ball on the tablet and then you swing.
You forget how important the arcade was back in the day. Where like the arcade was where the great stuff, the big high tech stuff was.
Yeah, and then you hope that they could bring it home and make it look even close.
Yeah, you kind of got it close. Yeah, that was.
There was the Wii U balance board. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Reggie's body is ready.
It's funny, all this stuff that and some of the stuff did end up coming out. Like
some of it, but I remember, you never got a game where you sniped people out windows. That was not a great time for that.
Particularly Miyamoto-san. This actually came out.
That did happen, yeah. But I remember when this was shown at E3, and we were in the booth arguing about whether it was a new game system or whether the controller was an add-on for the Wii. Like the messaging on this was terrible.
Well, it actually says in the beginning here, a new controller.
Yeah, it focuses on the controller. I think you only see
to the new.
I think you only see the actual hardware like twice and like 2 shots. You barely see this little box in the background.
The tablet. Yeah.
And like everyone was very confused.
It's crazy. So it looks like, as far as chat's concerned, it's Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a very strong argument for Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I can see it for sure.
The Donkey Kong Country game, I don't like them, but they, those are classics for a lot of people. Star Fox. Star Fox is a legit thing. There's a good Dragon Warrior on it. There's some great shooters on it. There's the Disney games. You can't argue with Aladdin.
Vincent says that Nintendo is projecting 24 million. That's crazy. They'll never hit 24 million. I don't care what they're projecting. I really don't, dude. They've sold 8 million basically this entire year. There's no way they're going to sell another 18 million in the next 90 days. That's not happening. Just because Nintendo says something doesn't mean that it's true.
Mega Man X games, yeah. Super Nintendo is a giant.
It was. I would be fine with Super Nintendo or Switch. But I think when it's all said and done, Switch is going to have the far superior game library.
To Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Not a chance in hell. Never.
Again, I think you're
never.
looking at it like the first whatever to do whatever instead of.
No, I'm looking at it as games that I think are still good and fun to play. And I'm discounting. I hate the Donkey Kong Country games. Like, I don't care what they were the first to do. I don't think the Switch has a lot of great games on it. I just don't.
I would much rather have to play Switch's library than go back and play the SNES library.
I wouldn't. I would rather fight my way through a Donkey Kong Country game than have to play Astral Chain again. That's for sure.
Interesting. I would say that some of the third-party projects that they've worked on have not turned out great.
No.
For Switch. They seemed like they were going to be great, and then they ended up not.
I mean, there's plenty of bad third-party games on Super Nintendo, too.
Yeah,
but
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not talking about those. I'm just talking about if you want me to play the Mario game on Super Nintendo or on Switch, I'm going to pick the Mario one. You want me to play the Zelda game on Super Nintendo or Switch, I'm going to pick Link to the Past. If only because Link to the Past is faster.
Well, Link to the Past is probably the greatest Zelda game ever.
Definitely.
I mean, it's definitely up there for me. Yeah. So I hear that. I just think
Metroid. I'm going to pick Super Metroid.
Yeah.
Animal Crossing doesn't really have an equivalent.
Well, for now. I mean, I haven't played Metroid Prime 4 yet. And we have Bayonetta coming.
I'm talking Metroid Dread.
There's still, I would rather play Super Metroid than Metroid Dread, for sure. But Switch isn't done yet. So I think it's a pretty close contest at the very least.
Not for me.
Yeah.
Like, Switch has got to have an amazing next few years if they want to come anywhere close to Super Nintendo or GameCube for me.
Okay. All right, interesting discussion, nevertheless.
I mean, it's certainly an improvement from last gen. Like, I'm not debating that. But
yeah. And it is interesting, too, that the sales have just, it's destroying the Super Nintendo. It just shows you how much the market has grown.
Oh, yeah, there's a much more fertile ground to
you got to remember, there's two huge competitors now. Back then, there was one.
Yeah.
And it's still, the Switch has sold 100 million units. It's pretty amazing.
Also, there was a lot of reticence to buy a Super Nintendo back then, I remember, because more so than there was for a Genesis, because a lot of people didn't know the Master System existed. Yeah. The Genesis was sort of their first exposure to Sega.
A lot of people still don't know it existed.
But there were a lot of parents, I remember my friends and everyone at school, like they had, even the ones who had their parents that bought them a Genesis, their parents would balk at buying the Super Nintendo because we already have a Nintendo.
Oh, right.
The concept of upgrading to a new hardware, that was where that got introduced.
You're
basically.
Right. Yeah.
Like that.
That's a good point.
I mean, Atari did that too, but it wasn't as wide. Most people never even knew the 5200 or the 7800 existed.
Dude, they tanked so bad.
But the Super Nintendo, I was like, well, what's the difference? Like that was the question that the parents would always ask: is what's the difference between the one that one, the one they already have? So,
and there was a good overlap too. Like they continued supporting NES for a while after the Super Nintendo was released.
Yeah. So in the end, I mean, in the end, I believe it's outsold the Genesis in the long run. But like early on, the Genesis had the advantage that no one knew what Sega was, and it wasn't a sequel to the previous thing that everybody already owned.
And everybody always said sports games are better on Genesis. Yeah. I don't know if I even agree with that, but that was
early on it was because that was where Madden was.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Super Nintendo didn't get Madden for another year, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, there you go. Walk down memory lane with the Switch hitting 100 million. It's going to become the best-selling Nintendo console of all time. It'll probably end up winning by a pretty big chunk.
I mean, it got a few more years left. It's gonna come within striking distance of the DS.
You think it'll get to 154?
I don't think it'll get to 154, but I bet it'll get to 130, 140 range. It'll come within viewing distance. I don't think it'll beat it, but it's gonna be up there.
I would say when it's all said and done, 125, 130. That'd be my guess. Which still leaves a huge
I don't know. I think it depends. Like I think Breath of the Wild might surge that thing again.
Maybe. It seems like everybody has one already.
Yeah, but we've said that about GTA 5 too. So
yeah. I do think that it will end up being the best-selling Nintendo console forever. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think the next one will sell as well as Switch, and I think then we'll really start seeing what Pactor's been talking about, where people are like, I don't know if I need a console anymore. We're kind of starting to see that transition with Game Pass now and stuff like that. So
I don't think we're seeing that at all, but
PS5
still selling more than everything before it. Like, and you can't even get it enough to fulfill demand.
Yeah.
Like, there is no slowdown on people wanting consoles.
Yeah.
That's going to be a very, very long. I don't think Pactor and maybe we will not live to see that day.
We'll see. Or maybe we won't.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got to move on. We're running out of time. We're going to talk next about something that I watched on Netflix that I fell in love with. And I think that all of you should be watching it as well. It is a brand new show. And don't say no when I tell you what it's based on. Because I know your initial reaction for a lot of people are going to be like, ugh. It is a show based on League of Legends called Arcane. And it is amazing. Matt, have you watched this?
No.
So,
I mean, I would have if he told me to for the show, but he didn't.
But
it just didn't occur to me because it's League of Legends, so I was like, wow, that could be good.
Well, as most of you know, I used to be a big League of Legends fan. I played it for close to a decade. I quit about a year ago, and I have not gone back. I have not played a single match of League of Legends in at least a year. Most of that was just because I hated the community. I couldn't deal with the toxicity of the people playing it anymore. I still enjoyed actually playing it. But the first thing I will say about this is that you need no interest in League of Legends whatsoever to enjoy this show. It is, even as someone who played it for almost a decade, I didn't even recognize hardly any of the characters.
I wouldn't recognize it. I had no idea League of Legends was supposed to take place in a world that looked like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, because, like, there's been nothing to show it before. Mm-hmm. There's no cinematics in the game. There's no story in the actual game. There's lore that Riot writes, and when you...
Riot has, like, giant binders of lore and narrative and history of the world in, like, a vault somewhere. Like, they have all this written out in, like, outline form and stuff. It exists. I've heard about it. But now I guess they're finally getting around to doing the actual narrative form content that they've talked about for years.
Yep, absolutely. I watched... So they're releasing this in an odd way. They're releasing it in acts, which means that right now there are like 3 episodes that are live, and each episode is like 40 minutes long. And then on November 13th, they're releasing another batch of episodes, and then like the first week of December, they're releasing another batch of episodes instead of just all at once or one a week or whatever. I don't remember any shows doing that on Netflix. Do you?
No, usually it's either the whole season or one of the week.
Yeah, it's really bizarre that they're doing it this way. But so I started watching.
They mess with the format on sometimes they do that with animated stuff where they one batch gets split up into 3 seasons, but usually the 3 seasons are split up like by quarters. It's months apart, like He-Man. He-Man went up in August?
Yeah.
And like the second season, which is really the second half of the one order they made, is going up like in 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks.
Yep. But Netflix, very rare for this to happen on Netflix. And so I started watching this. I had no clue who any of the characters were. Because as Matt pointed out, like, Riot doesn't do stuff like this. Like, they'll do cinematic trailers when, like, a new skin comes out for a character. And sometimes they'll talk about stuff in that, and I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Or if you ever read the descriptions on YouTube for one of the trailers for League of Legends, I have no idea what any of it means. And what it is, it's all this lore that, as Matt said, Riot has written and collected in these binders that it's just done nothing with, and it all is just spilling forth in Arcane. This excellent... I don't even know how they're doing this, Matt. It almost looks like they're filming it in live action and then laying the art over the top. Because
they could be rotoscoping and motion capturing, yeah.
Because the facial expressions and the way the eyes move and shift, I don't know how you could hand animate it. I really don't. It is amazing. The art in this, the animation in it, the humanity that comes through, it's incredible. I can't believe
It's very likely they're using mocap for the faces.
You think?
Yeah. A lot of people do that now.
Is that common now?
Disney used to do that. Used to shoot photo reference for everything. They would basically shoot the movie. They were, you go look back at the Sleeping Beauty and even Snow White. Like they use video reference and photo reference all the time. I mean, obviously, I think they're doing some kind of more mocap-y sort of Avatar style thing with this, but that wouldn't surprise me at all.
The eyes in this
that's
are
very common.
Incredible.
If you have the money for it, a lot of people.
It's really expensive to do it.
Yeah, I mean, but like Pixar does that.
Yeah.
Like you have mocap for the actors all the time.
Yeah.
You're not beholden to
for
it.
The faces.
You don't have to use that. Mm-hmm. Or for the whole character. It happens.
Well, I figured they do mocap for the characters. I just figured that's a given for the animation.
But
stuff.
facial mocap for performances is very common now.
Well,
for a high level budget, obviously Riot does have the budget for this.
Well, if that's what they're using in this, they should use it in everything because it is amazing. Not that it matters. It really doesn't matter, the plot or the characters. How much you care about League of Legends or do not care, completely irrelevant to watching this show. It's basically a story of the haves and the have-nots. The characters from League of Legends are living kind of underground in this slum with all the other underprivileged people. And then there's this other place called Imperial City where everyone's rich. They have all the resources that they could ever need. And so the characters from League will go into Imperial City, and they're like Robin Hood. They go there and they steal, they rob, and they bring stuff back to their poor community underground. And that's kind of the crux of the plot.
It's based on the programmers at Riot trying to get lunch.
Could be. If you do know League of Legends, the main characters in this, the main character of them all is Jinx. But in the early going, she's a little girl and she's called Powder. This is before she gets her full name. And V is her big sister, who's another League of Legends character. And at the beginning of the very first episode, their mother is killed. There's a huge war going on. Their mother is killed. Vander takes them under his wing and kind of becomes their surrogate father and takes them to this underground world where they start growing up. Once they get there, they form this ragtag group of ruffians who, as I said, they head into the city, steal stuff, bring it back to the poor people who live around them, and that's kind of what happens. Their surrogate father, Vander, is the leader of the underground, but he has connections with Imperial City. So when, at the beginning, they do this heist, and they go into this, inventor's, lab and steal all this stuff, and a big explosion goes off, and the building, crumbles, and people die. And so Vander's connection to Imperial City comes to see him and says, hey, we know that some of your people did this. Can we work this out? We don't want to come in here and just knock heads, basically. And that's kind of how the plot all takes off. And if you do care about League of Legends, you do learn the backstories of so many of the characters in the series. But again, I just want to keep accentuating that it really does not matter how much you care about League of Legends at all. It is just amazing, all on its own. If you are into League, here's a quick rundown of some of the characters that at least I recognize from the first act, which again is the first 3 episodes. As I said, Jinx, V, Caitlyn, Jace, Heimerdinger who hardly anyone plays at as a game. I'm surprised he's in this. He is the mad scientist, and he has an apprentice, and that's Victor. And then Echo is in it, and Echo's a brand new character who has only been around for I guess around 3 years at this point, something like that. And then they also introduced a brand new champ who's going to eventually be in the game in this show. His name is Silco, and they debuted him in the show. Everything about it's incredible. The writing, the voice acting, the sound design is incredible. The art, all of it. Listen to it with a good surround system or with headphones. I think a part of it too, and I won't say it doesn't matter at all if you care about League, but if you do care about League, then it does go up another level, because it does provide context to these characters that you've seen, played with, or against for a long time, and it gives them a personality. It almost made me go back and start playing League again, for example. So I was oh, wow, okay, I didn't realize that's what this champ was about, or that's where this champ was coming from. All you'd hear is their battle cries. You'd be that doesn't make any freaking sense. But now some of that stuff is starting to kind of fall into place and add up. But again, you don't need to watch it to enjoy it. I buzzed through the first 3 episodes. I can't wait until November 13th to get the rest of them. And if they hold up this first batch is, I won't be able to wait until December. So just wanted to quickly take a look at the show, get it on your radar, for Matt even. You're right, I should have told you to watch it. And so we could have both talked about it.
I mean, it would never have occurred to me to watch a League of Legends show.
Yeah. So. Well, it's not really branded League of Legends.
It's called Arcane League of Legends, whatever.
Yeah, it's Arcane, and then League of Legends is always little.
I knew what it was. I mean, when I saw it, I was I don't know,
Yeah.
Also, like, Netflix stuff is so wildly varied in quality at this point.
It is.
It's like I don't watch a lot of stuff as soon as
I don't either. I don't sample stuff anymore.
I wait until someone tells me it's good.
Exactly.
Like
Which is
Game.
exactly why I'm bringing this up on this show, because I feel like everybody's in that boat on Netflix now. Everyone's like in the I need someone I trust to tell me to watch stuff, because you're right. There's so many things I've tried to sample, and you get like 40 minutes into something, you're like, oh my God, this is so bad. Like, oh, I just wasted 40 minutes of my life. I'm a big fan of this. I think it's great. I think you're all going to love it. It's not written for kids. There's swearing in it. There's very intense things that happen in this. It's not R-rated or M-rated, but it's a hard T, I guess is the way I would put it. They don't drop the F-bomb, but they use pretty much all the other swear words. It's gritty. It's unpredictable. I've liked everything about it so far. Excellent work. I don't know how much Riot actually had to do with this.
I thought they made it in-house, pretty much.
Did they?
That's what I thought. I might be
when
wrong.
it starts, there's another studio that comes up first, and it says in cooperation with Riot or whatever.
I'm sure there was like an animation studio they contracted, but I discussed some of the narrative stuff with them years ago at one point, at E3 mainly, but like they were very keen to maintain control of all of it. I'm sure they were involved step by step.
Now they do look. They produce a ton of great CG trailers and for their new seasons and stuff like that. But they're not narrative driven for them.
No, but Riot guards this stuff with their lives. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure the animation studio was operating under orders at all times, not doing it themselves.
Game manual. They have a great cafeteria on campus.
But how often do they get to go to it?
We actually have a friend, Jaqui, who works at Riot, who's been a big cog working on this. Like I saw when it launched, like last week, she was like, "Oh my gosh, finally it's out there!" Blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's been years since they started talking about doing this,
and I had just forgotten about it. And then I actually went on Netflix to like just look around for stuff, and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, I'll give it a go." Like Jaqui worked on it, and it is based on League, and I kind of still like that game maybe. And literally 10 minutes into the first episode, I was hooked. Well, it starts off strong too, because there's just horrible things happen right at the beginning. And again, the eyes in this are so powerful. Like just the way they jut around, like that's one thing in animation that the animation has struggled to portray is the human eye. And for whatever reason, this just nails it. It just looks amazing. So I highly recommend it. It's called Arcane, and then it says League of Legends really little. And I think that's appropriate because it is based on League of Legends, but it doesn't matter how much or how little you know or how much or how little you care about League of Legends. You can still enjoy this. So I highly recommend it. C-Note 51 says, I love Heimer. Heimer was one of the characters I played as, but apparently he's like the lowest played one, and he's just this dude who's very squishy. He dies very easy, but he can drop turrets, and I always love turrets. Every game I play, I like turrets, and I never did that well with Heimerdinger, but I will say this, playing against him is really annoying, because the first thing you have to do is take out the turrets, because otherwise, if you go after him, the turrets will just wipe you out, so it just becomes this annoying thing of like, he puts down a turret, you destroy the turret, then you get a couple hits on him, then he puts down another turret. It gets annoying playing against him, but he's not very popular. C-Note says he's great in a ram. I don't even know what that is. I feel like I should know what it is, but I don't know what it is. Yeah.
I've played League of Legends like 4 times, so I'm not going to know what that stands for.
I think, isn't a ram something that's related to all games, though? I don't know. JM Rain says maybe Elden Ring has turrets.
I mean, all random, all mid.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I thought Heim was top. I thought he was a top champ. That's where I always play him anyway. It always seems to be where I play against him. I've seen some people play him bot lane too.
Summoning the phantoms is not super unlike a turret.
Yeah.
In Elden Ring.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe one of those phantoms is a turret or something, or like a plant or something that just spits poison or something and shoots poison. It could be. You never know. So anyway, that's Arcane. It's on Netflix. There's 3 episodes up right now, and they're coming out like every couple weeks after that. And like I said, each episode's 40 minutes, so you can get through this first act in like an hour and a half if you want to. If you don't like it, come on back. I want to hear why, because I flippin' love it. All right, let's move on. Just a couple topics left. In this last one, we're going to talk about Blizzard again, Matt, because It's just the gift that keeps on giving to podcasts. This week, it really is. This week, Activision Blizzard announced that both Diablo 4 and, even more oddly, Overwatch 2 has been delayed and maybe not even coming out next year, and probably not coming out next year. Most likely, both games have been delayed to 2023. Diablo 4, not as big a surprise. And the reason it's not as big a surprise, it's not because I know how long one's been developed versus the other one. It's because Overwatch 2 is going to be used in esports next year. And that is set in stone. There's no changing it. There's no going back. They've already done exhibitions at some esports events with it. In fact, the B-roll you're going to watch here in a second, that's where it comes from. It comes from an esports event from not that long ago. And now they're going to push it back to 2023. Diablo 4, I mean, didn't Rod Ferguson say that was almost wrapped up and ready?
No, I mean, I don't think we ever had a solid time frame for Diablo 4. Like, could have been anything.
Yeah, I mean, they actually have never given release dates for either one, just to be clear. They've never announced solid release dates for either game.
But I think people were assuming Overwatch 2 was closer just because of the use in the esports, and also the fact that they basically stopped the flow of content for the first one.
Right.
Which is weird, because if this gets, obviously they're still going to use it. It's not unusual that the Overwatch League gets stuff sooner than the general public.
Yeah.
But you're kind of hitting a point where, like, you're going to have had no real serious new content for Overwatch in like 3 years almost by the time this comes out.
Yep.
And you want to talk about a way to kill your game.
Now, here's Blizzard's official line is, it says it's doing this to make sure that it has post-launch support in the pipeline for both games before they are released.
Okay.
And it also said, and also because we have so many new people working on these games now, because they had to let go of so many leaders at their company, that they want time for the new employees to come in and kind of put their stamp on each one of the games.
Yeah, also they want time to pass so we forget that all this happened.
Right, which is what it really is all about.
And so they can stop calling it Blizzard.
You seem to be
I still believe they are removing the Blizzard brand from things.
Or do you think they wait because, look, Blizzard won't release another game until this. There's Diablo Immortal, the mobile Diablo game. That's a possibility. But otherwise, Blizzard may not release a new game in the next year and a half until these games are ready. Do you think maybe they are just waiting for the heat to blow over and then come back, release these games as Blizzard?
No.
Really?
I think you get rid of the Blizzard name can never be reclaimed. I think you get rid of it, you call them Activision games, and you hope that a year and a half from now people forget that Overwatch was a Blizzard game. Or at least you forget the mainstream media forgets.
Folks in chat, how do you guys feel about this? Do you feel like Blizzard's name is irredeemable? Would you never buy or play another game that had Blizzard's name on it? Or does it not matter because you know at the end of the day it's still Blizzard? And you're just not going to buy another Activision game or Blizzard game.
I think I mean, I don't think that matters so much as, like, if you release something else under the Blizzard name, you are automatically inviting the media to say, well, remember that company that got sued by California for being horrible? They just put out a new game. Like, that's news. That's a story. And it doesn't matter what we think or what we'd buy.
But do you think a year and some from now that'll still be a story?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
It's something to talk about. It's a scandal. It's something, the cable news will be all over that shit. For sure.
Huh.
I think it's easier if you just put this thing out under the Activision logo. Maybe you put Blizzard in there. Maybe you put, not on the titles, but you put in, like the way Diablo 2 says, Blizzard Presents when you're starting it up for the CG or whatever. But you just don't advertise it as a Blizzard game or the return of Blizzard or whatever. Like, it's Overwatch 2. It's coming out.
Sneaky says, I don't know who Blizzard are, and I always play Overwatch. That's funny. Nightwing 3060, I think he kind of gets it though. He says, I just want some new modes, new stages, and new characters in Overwatch 2.
I think you'll get that, but you're gonna have to wait a very long time.
I think maybe what he might be getting at though is, like, he'd be happy if they just put that in Overwatch and just said, here's Overwatch 2, instead of waiting for some new game or whatever.
Oh, sure, you'd like that, but then they wouldn't be able to charge you for it.
Oh, Bunko says WoW expansion, so that may be another game.
It might be in there somewhere.
That's coming, yeah. It's possible, for sure. Let's take a look at some other ones here. Emperor Dread says, well, absolutely, Matt is 100% right. Meaning that he agrees with you that they're going away. Mm-hmm. Blizzard is cold and I hate winters. Zet Saber. Minority Games, it doesn't matter. I will still buy Blizzard. Not Cirque says I don't play Blizzard games in general. Erebus says, nah, Blizzard is too beloved a name. Blizzard is staying.
Not anymore.
Jam Rain says it totally
Blizzard
matters.
has become the flagship icon for horrible, harassing, sex pesty.
You're right.
There's no way. You do not rehabilitate that.
Well, Jam Rain agrees. He says it totally matters. My money is not going to them without major changes, and it seems they have destroyed files recently. Oh, geez. Attempting to mitigate documentation of abuse. Eee. That's bad. OCD Master says, I think people will forget what happened. Nox Aeternitis says, Blizzard name might not go away, but they will not be been proudly displayed before games for many years at the very least.
Like, you're probably not going to file it off the buildings down in Irvine, but like, you're not going to be slapping that logo on everything as soon as the trailer gets released.
Yeah. I think a bunch of people playing games simply don't care. From Tiny2K. Norsensi says, I think people will forget about this and will buy Blizzard games eventually. And Sneaky comes around to say, I don't want to buy to support them. Then again, there's a lot of good people at Blizzard. I would be supporting those. Should I buy to?
Yeah, I mean, the people I know at Blizzard who were not involved in the
it's not their
harassment
fault.
scandals, like they basically said, like, if you don't buy stuff, you're basically just hurting the people that are still there. The only thing that's going to teach Activision and Blizzard a lesson is the legal consequences, which turned out to be basically a slap on the wrist so far.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing though, is like like not buying the games is not really going to push the needle one way or the other on that. You need legal consequences to get a corporation to react.
The fines, the maximum fines that they can give are so little.
Yeah, it's nothing.
There's nothing that the courts can really do. They're fining them the max they can, but it's just peanuts.
Yeah, but you need to get rid of the Blizzard thing. Like Blizzard is going away as a brand. Like you just get rid. It's just all going to be Activision now. I mean, they even got gun shy about the Activision thing. Look at how minor the Activision thing has been. Look at how minor the Activision branding has been in the Call of Duty PR.
Yeah. I do have a question for you, though. If that were the case, why would they delay these games? For the real reasons they're saying?
I mean, there are the real reasons they're saying, for sure. Like, they have a major turnover, and you have to kind of reevaluate how you're going to do that, and it changes the timeline. There's probably also some problems just in terms of what's happened over the last year and a half with working from home and the COVID stuff.
Otherwise, you just slap Activision on it and ship it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't stop them from releasing Diablo II Resurrected. Yeah. I think probably the main reason is, yes, what they're talking about. You have to readjust to a massive shift in leadership and staffing. And that's going to affect things. But it also is conveniently a way to gain some more time between now and when you have to release these things that need to do very, very well to make up for the amount of money you've spent developing them.
I'm wondering what Activision's thinking now, though. These two huge games that...
It's a fine question. And look, if Overwatch 2 doesn't catch fire, you're talking about the end of the Overwatch League and the whole. I mean, that's that whole thing.
That's a house of cards waiting to fall down.
And that's
already.
a bang. That's a whimper, not a bang. Overwatch it feels like it's about to collapse like a flan in a cupboard.
Well, I mean, it would be a bang for Activision after all the money it's invested in the league and everything.
Who even? How many people even know Overwatch League is still going? I
mean, you got to realize
I don't hear about it anymore.
Paid huge sums of money for franchise fees for that league.
You remember when we used to get
a lot of pro athletes?
Remember when we used to get a CG trailer for a character trailer every few months?
Yeah,
it's all gone.
It's all slowed down. Yeah,
we
didn't get nothing.
All the remember my ex-girlfriend and everybody who loved they don't play it anymore.
They don't play it anymore.
They barely pay attention.
Wow.
She used to go down and watch the Overwatch League stuff in person.
Well, I know every time I'd come over there, she was playing.
Oh yeah. Hasn't played. I mean, I think she still plays with friends and whatever. But she, the serious play and the following. I haven't heard about that in forever.
Interesting, man.
They moved on. They moved on to
screwing up.
They all moved on to Phasmophobia.
Look, it's getting dark out.
Yeah, it's dark. It's
wow,
gray.
We were talking about this at the show open, and look at it. It's so dark you can see the light, whereas when the show started, you couldn't see it. Mm-hmm. And now it's clear as day. Look at how dark it got just during this show. It was broad daylight when we started.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It's also pretty cloudy, but it's getting dark.
A little overcast.
The Game of the Year show will end in darkness.
It probably will. Yeah, absolutely it will. This one might end in darkness. We're still about 15 minutes away. It may be completely dark by then. It's been. Can you remember another gaming company falling like this? I can't.
Not from the high. Yeah, no. I mean, not for these reasons. I mean, like Gearbox took a dive for sure.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
But not for something like this. Although they had their share of.
They got their share of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So part of it may have been that, but this is just all on cultural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sad.
And the just, I'm surprised by the number of people who have been willing to just abandon them.
Yeah.
On principle in that
When
regard.
we first started talking
a
about
lot of
this,
times,
I thought you were crazy. I was like, no. I'm like, because Blizzard fans are some of the most hardcore fans. And I was like, there's no way these people will turn their backs on it. And some of them have.
Yeah.
Like, way more than I ever thought. So
the other thing there is
people are getting
the
a conscience.
The fact that BlizzCon does not have a reinstatement date is a huge flag.
tell. Yeah.
Like that's the fact that they didn't say like, well, because every other thing that's canceled something for COVID or for whatever has said like, okay, we got canceled, but we'll be back this day, 2022 or whatever, and they haven't.
Yep.
Like because it's never too early to start planning something like that.
Yeah.
You got to get the venue, you got to get
so much logistics.
but like the fact that they've just be like, oh, it'll be back one day, we'll do a thing, we'll see ya. It's just like, okay, that's called ghosting.
Yeah,
folks.
As the kids call it.
And as we all know what Blizzard does to things called ghost.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. If Blizzard plays his cards right, we won't talk about Blizzard again for a really long time.
That's what they would prefer, I think, yes.
So this might be the last time we talk about this for a really long time, unless it screws up again.
Yeah.
Which,
although we could just periodically do the Larry Wilmore Bill Cosby thing. Just be like, it's like, I've forgotten about you, motherfucker. Like, Blizzard.
Yeah. Just create like some little video clip or whatever that we play like once an episode or once.
Yeah, it could be our equivalent of the Sterling's fuck Konami
thing,
right, or Ubisoft thing. Yeah, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, so there you go. That's the latest on Blizzard, and again, I don't think we'll be talking about them for quite a while.
Unless they do another Warcraft expansion, but we don't really talk about those anyway.
Yeah, someone brought it up in chat though. That a WoW
and there must expansion. Be something. For a while, their work completely stopped on World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So like, who knows?
That train can't stop moving.
Yeah, and I've heard
it'll die. It'll literally
it's
die.
A shark. Yeah, it has to keep swimming. Yeah, but like, I've also heard that in the wake of this, Activision has stepped up, looking into building another equivalent MMO that would not be attached to Blizzard.
Wow.
To kind of replace that revenue stream, which seems like a very optimistic project to start at this point.
Good luck with that one.
In reality.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too many chips on that bet. So, all right, there you go. It's time to move on. Last topic of 278. Something we discussed last week, although I was the only one who was able to discuss it because I got early review code. Matt has since, I'm assuming, played a metric ton of it. We're going to talk about Forza Horizon 5. Matt, maybe the best way to approach this is there anything, now that you've been playing it, that I said last week that you don't agree with, or anything that I left out that you think we should have mentioned last week?
Well, the thing that I think, I don't know if you remember if you left it out, but like the disconnections on this are ridiculous.
I haven't had that problem at all.
Oh, it disconnects every 5 minutes. Like not Xbox, but Forza loses connection from the Forza server constantly.
Oh, maybe I wasn't paying attention to that.
Like a little thing up pops says you've lost connection. You hit X to pop up and retry. Constant. Everyone I know who's playing it constantly. Like they just gave up. Like a lot of them gave up because I'm playing in a clan or like a club with my friends from an online forum I've known forever. We've always been in the same Forza club, and like we can't get anything done because it just disconnects. And like they admit it, on the Reddit they've talked about, like they've said, like, yes, we're working on it. It's probably because we're playing early access, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't come out till today, technically.
Wait, it comes out today?
Technically, if you for Game Pass and normal version, if you bought the Deluxe or Ultimate, you got it like however many days early.
Today is its release date.
But today is the official release date. If you did not pay for the Deluxe edition,
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow, we were way out ahead on this one.
So
I had no idea we had talked about it that early.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of connection issues, and the fact in ways that the others I've never had with them. And I'm not losing connection on the Xbox. Like I'm still on Xbox Live.
Yeah.
Just Forza's been disconnecting.
Their servers. Interesting.
It's gotten a little better over the week. Like it was better on Sunday. It was a little better yesterday, but like I haven't tried it today. But
have they figured out? Is it just maybe the Game Pass version of it?
No, because I'm not using the Game Pass version. I bought the Ultimate version.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And it's also happening on PC.
By the way, this game sold 800,000 copies before it went on sale. Basically, that 800,000 people were willing to pay extra money to play it early.
Yeah, I think it probably is just because they have way more people than they thought they were going to have.
It's possible. Yeah,
this is way more. I think that's almost double what 4 had before in the early access.
And full disclosure, by the way, I have spent probably an extra 3 hours since I talked about it last Thursday, because I've been plowing on Call of Duty Vanguard. But I'll say this: in the few hours I have continued to play it, it's populated now. Like I've raced against some of your drivatars, and your drivatar is in fact a jerk.
Yep, so is yours.
Is it?
Yeah, his drives like one of those big boxy like Prius Scion-y looking things.
Oh, really?
And like boxes me out on turns and shit. I'm just like, oh, you.
Well, if it really follows the way I drive, it should be like pinning you against the guardrail around turns, because that's what I normally do.
Well, you're never gonna get me on your outside, so it doesn't do that. But it definitely is good at blocking.
Oh, that's funny.
I play.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's Forza.
Yeah.
But I think
Are you disappointed that it's Forza?
No. Like there's no reason to mess with perfection to some degree.
Yeah.
I do like the expeditions are really cool. Like that. Yeah, I never cared much about the events or the showcase stuff very much in the other games, but the expedition stuff is great. Little find stuff and explore things. Thing is great. Like I find myself doing other events to gain enough XP to get another one of those. Like I want to see more of those. So so mission accomplished.
It's like I said, half the game should be that stuff.
I certainly, that is not a thing that's happened with previous Forza games. So and they find a way to make all that stuff interesting and like take you on weird little twists and turns and things. Yeah. They're great.
It's one of the best changes to Forza
Horizon. Like you want to do some DLC that adds like 100 more of those. Like bring it on. Like absolutely, that's the best new thing in this game.
Yep.
Beyond that,
how many cars did you start with? You did pay for the extra version, though, so you probably got a bunch of.
So I got I got pre-order cars, and I got some cars from having Forza 4, and so I think I started with 20 something.
Okay.
But I've only been mainly using. I've been using that one, and I got some ridiculous 999 S2 thing off a wheel spin early on, so I've used that a lot.
That's cool
because it's got 10 handling.
Oh wow!
That's
what you want.
It corners so well, it's too good.
Oh
at
really?
Times. Like I oversteer too much.
Because you account
sometimes.
for a little bit of slip.
Because it almost feels unreal how well it can turn.
On rails.
It handles so well that I'm doing on the turns, and I turn the racing line down to just the braking line. So you see a little braking line, it just tells you, you got to slow down now. That braking line is wrong for this car much of the time. You don't need to, unless it's red, you don't need to slow down.
It tells you to brake and you don't need to
no, you do not need to slow down on that turn unless it's red.
Because it turns so well.
Because it's so responsive.
What is that car again?
I can't remember. It's Apollo.
Text it to me
I think
later.
It's the Apollo something. It's one of those super custom formula things that's just got tons of weird.
Vincent says, as of today, it's past 3 million players.
There you
go.
And
then ETH Demon asks, which mode are you playing on?
I'm
quality
playing on
or performance?
I'm playing on performance.
I'm playing on quality.
I want the frame
I'm playing at 30 frames a second.
I want the 60.
Yeah.
For a racing game for sure. It still looks great.
I turned it on to the performance mode, and it still does look amazing. Yeah. But this game is just so gorgeous, and I haven't played enough next gen stuff that it's I want it to look as good as possible. And the 30 frames, it is locked at 30, and it doesn't bother me that much to play it. It doesn't bother me at all, honestly, to play it at 30 frames a second. So I have been, and I did switch it up just to see. And you're right, I could hardly even tell the difference between the performance and the.
Yeah, it was not a big enough difference, so I just went to. I'd rather have the frame rate for the responsive driving. Environments are great. It's fun to explore. Just drive around and see what you see. I like that the expedition stuff takes you places you haven't been before, and that kind of dumps you out there, and you can kind of poke around for a while.
Yep, and open up a bunch of new territory and unlock a bunch of stuff. Yep.
It is weird to me that they kind of double down on the narrative. There's cutscenes constantly. People are constantly talking, and I don't want to hear what they say. And your character talks a lot too, which I thought it was weird that you can choose what your character looks like and what they dress as, and you can choose they them pronouns for them. You got all this, but you can't choose not to be like
annoying
British.
Yeah.
Is it British or like Australia? Like
I couldn't
tell.
the
two voices.
I don't want to say because I'll get it wrong.
There's only two voices. There's a male voice and a female voice, and they both have accents. And I'm like, why aren't there It's weird because you're supposed to be the character from the last one. Like they talk about other events from previous Forza Horizons.
Right, they do.
They talk about that you race the train, and so there's actual continuity in this, which I was like, I didn't see that one coming, but odd, okay. Yeah. The expedition thing. I went backwards from what you were concerned about. I'm like, are the expedition things the influence of Fable being in the building?
Oh,
because they kind of added quests, right?
They did, yeah. Yeah.
Like, you got to go find the flight suit, and you got to go, like, take a picture of the Jade statue.
You're right.
You gotta,
Maybe going in reverse.
Yeah, they took influence from Fable. Meanwhile, like, Fable's going to get revealed, and it's like, you have a steam-powered race car in the new Fable.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Fable Horizon.
So does that concern you at all? Like what I was talking about last week about like, the narrative is so bad in this that it,
I think any Fable game is going to be inherently less bro-y than this is.
I hope so.
Also, like, let's not pretend that Fable's always had the greatest story in the world.
No.
Like,
Yeah, Peter Molyneux, I mean, hardly any part of that franchise has ever lived up to his expectations or his flirtations with whatever it.
In part because it wasn't his thing. It was
the
big blue box guys were doing that had gotten swallowed up by Lionhead, and he was trying to make the that Milo thing.
Yeah,
most of the time.
Yeah, which was a total disaster.
Yep.
Like a lot of stuff that he ended up working on. Unfortunately, it always sounded good until you played it.
Mm-hmm. So no, this is great. Like absolutely exactly what it should have been. I don't have anything bad to say about it.
Yeah,
the soundtrack's great. Like probably the best.
You really have to nitpick.
Yeah, probably the best soundtrack of the series so far.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of just like if you can get around the tone of the cutscenes and the voice acting, there's no other downside to this thing.
Yeah, and they are more prevalent than one would want.
They are. And it's just there are little things where it's just like okay, like it's interesting because I was talking about how like you just show up and steal people's old junker cars out of these barns you find. It's interesting how like the cars you find are all, at least so far, all couched as like, oh, this was my uncle's car from back when he used to race back in the day. And like you restore the car and like, oh, my uncle was so happy to see this, and he says take good care of it. I'm like, okay, so you're trying to frame it as like we are not stealing cars. We're sort of discovering relics from the races of the past.
In the prior ones?
No, it was much more just like here's a thing.
Like, oh, look at this thing we found.
We just looted England for all of its classic. Which, to be fair, England had it coming. Like if you've been to a museum over there, like we can take a Corvette that somebody left in a barn in England, and we're good. But this feels a little more. Also, you mentioned the thing about like racing through ruins and how that felt weird. I don't know if you noticed, but at the beginning with all the text at the beginning, the ruins and archaeological sites in this game are licensed by the Mexico like Department of like Antiquities or whatever.
Wow!
Like so they actually did license those and approve them through the Mexican government.
Well, if Mexico's cool with it,
Mexico's cool with it.
I'm cool with it. All right.
Yeah.
Problem solved. So there you go. That's Forza
and they're very well
5.
recreated. Those are cool areas.
Yeah, they are. That's finally now we can say 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
To Forza Horizon 5.
Which is probably why you can't destroy anything in those areas, right? Like you can't knock over any like.
And we should have mentioned last week that there is no vehicle damage in this.
I mean, there is. You dent them, but they don't have. Performance.
Don't affect the performance.
It doesn't impact performance. You just ruin the look of the car. No,
like,
it's an arcade racer.
Comments on the episode, people are like, "Oh, you didn't bring up there's no damage and it doesn't affect performance." I don't want that in this.
Never has had that.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I don't want that in Horizon. I want it in Motorsport, but I don't want it in Horizon.
But I should have brought it up. That was my fault. So I do apologize for not mentioning that. That is important to a lot of people who are figuring out whether they want to buy a driving game or not. So, for the record, damage does not affect the performance of your car at all. Just so you know before you head on in there. But both of us, would you recommend buying it at full price as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't even need to just get it on Game Pass. Like, it's worth paying for.
Yeah, I'm entirely happy to have paid for it.
Yep. Okay. You know what time it is, people? It's time for Name That Game. Some of y'all's favorite part of GameFace every week. A quick rundown of how it works. I'll give you a bunch of clues. You need to figure out the game that I am talking about. You are trying to come up with the name of that game before Matt Kyle. The chat wins all ties. So if Matt calls out the name of the game, I look over, I give you guys a couple beats to see if it pops up in the chat. I think what we found is the delay on chat on the show is not that bad.
No.
It actually seems pretty snappy. And we will always err on the side of caution. Now, if you beat Matt, you win a set of 6 sifted stickers. Say that quickly. And we will ship them anywhere. Doesn't matter where you live. I just shipped some out to Ireland. Just shipped some out to England. We've shipped to Portugal. We've shipped to Canada. We'll ship them anywhere. No matter where you live, we will ship them out to you. So everybody can play. Everyone can win. Let me get the sound effects up here. And we'll see how this one goes. This is always an adventure. Last week, I thought I had done a good job, and I think it was guess on the first clue. So We'll see if I can do a little bit better than this one. But
actually, I really should have gone with my instinct on that one. That was my first response was eco.
Yeah.
But you said case, and I thought you were being clever.
I threw you off.
Yeah.
Intentionally.
But not the chat.
The chat got it. They didn't get it. Maybe the
chat got it so easily he wrote it upside down.
He did, right.
Yeah.
And then he wrote it right side up and still pretty much got it. Sneaky says the delay on the TV app is awful. Okay.
That's always true.
But he won. Sneaky won.
He did win a couple weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, Sneaky, did you get your stickers? You should have got them. They were sent out a while ago. People are already guessing.
I'm just saying words.
Code Vein.
Code Vein is too recent.
All right, if you keep doing this, we're going to just disqualify you from winning. And I won't say if the games that you're guessing are actually right or not. He says not yet. Okay.
Yeah, Ireland's a ways away.
I think everyone's counting. People guess Body Harvest all the time. I think people are counting on me someday.
Yeah, one day they think you're going to pick Body Harvest. That would be stupid, though, because Body Harvest is one of my favorite N64 games.
You get it right away. Yep. And that plays into it as well. So, all right, we're ready. Again.
Yeah, you already made the mistake. What was the one that was one of my... it was one of those games. So some game that was like one of my favorites.
Darkness. It was...
No, it was one that was like one of my favorites, and you didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, Too Human.
Yeah.
Too Human.
And you guessed it on the first clue. Yeah. Let's hope that doesn't happen this week. Okay, you guys all ready? Here we go. The first clue. And now that I'm reading this, somebody may get it. It's so weird writing these like in my office and then coming in here and sitting down with you and the chat next to me. Sometimes the clues read differently. And suddenly I'm like, oh, that's terrible. We'll see how this goes. Okay, first clue. 2 animals are better than one, even if one of them is fictional. 2 animals are better than one, even if one of them is fictional. Hear that ticking clock? You can't hear it, but they can.
Interesting.
Dead Saber, not Okami. Sneaky, not Viva Pinata. Actually, Sneaky, don't play. You just won. Sorry, man. You can keep guessing, but I'm just not going to say whether your guesses are right or not. We want to like make sure people have a chance to win.
Yeah, the thing that first came to mind, but it doesn't work because they're not fictional. Is that one game? I can't remember the name of it, but it's like it was a PS2 game with like two experiment animals, like a rabbit and something else, and they were attached by a tether.
Oh,
you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. What is that game?
Yeah, it wasn't that. It's not. But you remember?
That's not it.
I can see the cover in my head.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I bet someone in the chat knows it.
Ratchet and Clank, no. Banjo, no. 60 Minutes, no. Sly Cooper, no. Enslaved, no. Good guess, though. Jack and Daxter, no. Klonoa, no. These are all good guesses, actually. Oh, Sneaky says if he won, he was going to donate his stickers. Cool, man. Cookie and Cream. Yep, that's the game you're talking about.
No, it's not.
No?
No, Cookie and Cream was a like a platformer kind of thing. This was like weirder and more extreme. Like it was like they were escaped experiment animals.
Oh.
Like, and they were like, yeah, it's like the cover is the rabbit is like real rundown. Like it's.
Oh, okay. All right, nobody got it. Bloody Roar, no. Knuckles Chaotix, no.
Yeah, I don't really have a guess on that one.
Okay, here comes the next clue. We made it past the first clue. Hallelujah. You may have forgotten about me, but Netflix did not. You may have forgotten about me, but Netflix did not. All right, let's see if we can get any guesses here from the chat. Oh, I should have brought the chat up here so people can see. Sonic. No.
Yeah, there's no Sonic Netflix show.
Yeah, is there? No, I guess there isn't. Sonic's too big for that, man. He's in the movies. Mm-hmm. He's going to be on Netflix. Whack Fu? I don't even know what that is. Bandersnatch. Nope. Okay, that clue didn't seem to tip anyone off. Let's go to the third clue. This one might do it. Open world action RPGs are common now, but they were not then. Open world action RPGs are common now, but they weren't then. The next clue is going to give it away, so you guys better hope that you get it before the next one, because it's going to be a race, I think, for the next clue. Open world action RPGs are common now, but they weren't then. People are saying the ticking clock's really loud. I love that. Oh, that's it. Not Sir got it. Dragon's Dogma.
Oh.
Yep. That's it. Not Cirque is our winner. Good job, man. Here's the next two clues, and this one would have definitely given it away. It's nothing like chess, but it has something in common. Would that have tipped it off?
I don't
for you?
get any of these clues.
The pawn system.
Oh.
That was its big hook. Two animals are better than one.
Was there a
even if one of
Netflix
them is
show about
fictional.
this?
Dragon Dogma.
Right.
You may have forgotten about me, but Netflix didn't. There was a Dragon's Dogma show last
I didn't know
September,
that.
I think. Open world action RPGs are common now. They weren't then because the game came out like 11 years ago. It's nothing like chess, but it has something in common. The pawn system. And then the final clue was, after almost a decade, it's rumored that Capcom is finally working on a sequel. And I figured Capcom would have tipped it off at that point. So, wow, we made it to like the third or fourth clue for once. Awesome. Not Cirque. Congratulations. Here's a round of applause for you, my brother. As always, reach out to us here on Twitch. You can DM us here. You can DM me on Twitter. I am at Dinfire. You can DM Sifted on Twitter at Sifted Games. You can DM me on Sifted at Shane. Or you can send us a message on Patreon. However you want to do it. We'll be waiting, and we'll ship them out to you as soon as possible. Congratulations. Not Cirque said his dad watched Dragon's Dogma on Netflix. And that's how it works. You connect those dots, and there you go. So, and JM Rain, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. Perfect timing for that. Let's do Q&A. But we can only answer like one or two questions max, unfortunately, because we're already way over on this episode. If any of you guys have any questions for us very quickly, get them in. Start running through some of our promo here. Let's see. Yeah, if you want to follow Matt or I on Twitter, I am at Dinfire. Matt is at mkeil. That's MKEIL. Hit him up. Also head to patreon.com/sifted and support us. We're here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, giving you 3 hours of the best, most informative gaming discussion you will find anywhere in the world. And we'd appreciate it if you could pledge $1 or $2 for it. That would be awesome. You can give us $1. You can give us $1 million a month if you want. And I promise you, we'll spend every dollar wisely. And it will actually go into what we're doing here to make the production better for you. Jam Rain gifting those tier 1 subs to the masses in our chat. Another reason to make sure you show up for the live show. Justin Horman, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. Derek D111, which game coming out in spring 2022 needs to be delayed to summer? Too many good games all at once. My pick would be Saints Row because I want to play it, but won't have time. I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, Saints Row is a pretty good one. Saints Row is something I don't need to prioritize, but I do want to play.
Yeah.
And I do think that it would maybe be the one that falls by the wayside compared to all the other things coming out in February.
Yeah.
So
I think you nailed it with your first pick. Good job. Leo Charles, somebody that I don't think we've ever answered a question from before. How you doing, Leo, man? Thanks for checking out GameFace live on Twitch. His question is, or her question, have you guys seen the footage of Lies of P? It's like Bloodborne, but Pinocchio. It looks so great. I did not watch it. I saw it on Sifted yesterday, and I saw there was like a bunch of likes or a bunch of one-ups and a bunch of comments, and I should have watched it, and I did not. I was just too busy trying to squeeze all this stuff in. And as it ended up, I screwed up anyway and didn't have B-roll for the multiplayer of Call of Duty Vanguard. So I really dropped the ball. Yeah. Did you watch it, Matt?
No.
Well, I guess we'll both have to go check it out. Thanks for the recommendation, though. Schneeky, do you think Nintendo needs to hurry up with the Switch Pro?
I don't think the Switch Pro exists.
It would be so easy to make that it's hard for me to say it doesn't exist, because I feel like you could make it tomorrow, really.
Then why didn't they?
Yeah. Maybe the better question is, do you think there's going to be a Switch Pro, or do you think there's going to be another console?
I think it's just going to be whatever the next console is.
I think at this point, the Switch is getting long in the tooth, and I think that's the right move. Just screw the mid-cycle upgrade and just go straight to the next one. Obviously, making sure that it's backwards compatible still.
Although, to be fair, whatever they announce as the next system, we're going to be like, this is not enough of a leap to be a new system. It should have been the Switch Pro.
Yeah.
That's my prediction, is that whatever they announce as the next system is going to feel like it should have been the Switch Pro and not Switch 2 or whatever it is.
Okay.
Or the Super
so
Switch.
You're saying people will end up being disappointed in it.
It will not be a power leap. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's
but they'll
PS4.
call it they'll call it like a Super Switch or something
right.
for a bigger retail punch.
Yeah. Is that Saber? When do you plan to ask for more Pactor Factor questions? I think. Well, I'll be cutting an episode starting tonight, and then tomorrow. I think the last time I looked at our list of questions, we had 8 left. That'll usually get us through 2 weeks, roughly. So in a couple weeks. And obviously, the next round of episodes we shoot with Pactor are going to be the last episodes for the rest of the year. So there will be Thanksgiving and Christmas stuff in there. So make sure you ask him about stuff like that, about his Thanksgiving or about his Christmas when we do ask for the questions. As always, we'll ask for questions from Pactor Factor on our Twitter feed at Sifted Games. We'll ask for it on our YouTube channel, in the community tab of our YouTube channel. We get great questions from there. We'll ask for them on Patreon. Anyone who pledges on our Patreon, their questions get priority as far as making them into the show. And then we'll ask for them on Sifted as well. You really can't miss it, but somehow people always do. I don't know what else we can do, but it's it's everywhere. We plaster it everywhere when we ask for new questions, and still people miss them. I don't know. We do our best. We do the best we can. Let's see. Maybe we'll take one more before we head on out. It'll be nice to have a full week to prepare for the next episode. I will say that, because this was a rush getting this episode done. I didn't think I was going to do it, and I kind of didn't. I failed in some ways. Drifter J. I don't see you asking questions very often, so we'll get to one of yours. Matt, do you think a Babylon 5 game done like Star Wars Squadrons is possible with the new show coming out?
Anything's possible, but this is Warner Brothers, and they don't get stuff done timely, and they are barely putting enough money towards the Babylon 5 new show to really get it even made. Don't see them going in on a multimedia synergy with Babylon 5. I would like that. I would play it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
And to refresh everyone's memory, what is Babylon 5 again?
Babylon 5 is a sci-fi show from the 90s that was predates Deep Space Nine, I believe, but it's by James Straczynski, who did a bunch of good stuff, including Real Ghostbusters and the original He-Man. It is the greatest science fiction serialized show ever put on television, better than all Star Trek. It was a planned 5-year show. It went 5 years, but originally went 4. They were going to cancel it after 4, so they crammed the last 2 years worth of story into one season, and it was amazing. So the ratings went up, and they got a 5th season, and they had to make up another year of stories to fill the sudden year, the extra year they got, and it wasn't amazing.
Yeah.
But that first part, it was from 93 to I think 98. With CG effects, which have aged just about as well as you think they have, but it's great. It's great science fiction with a lot of insight and human condition commentary, and they have for a long time it was disappeared, and they couldn't even get a decent remaster of it, but they are letting JMS do a new show, and so it's not going to be a sequel, it's not going to be a remake, it is a new series in the world.
Okay.
No one knows if the events of the original show are going to be canon to it, but we'll see. But it's an exciting idea. And in Babylon 5 there's a lot of starship combat, like space fighter combat, but the fighters are done with an eye to Newtonian physics. So what the Star Furies they're called, and what they do is they will actually accelerate towards a target and then turn their boosters off and then turn themselves sideways so they broadside it as they use the inertia, because there's no inertia never gets changed in space, so they they're still going as fast as they were because that's space, there's zero gravity, but they just point themselves towards the target and just pepper it on the way through. So dogfights and attack runs are completely different than what you'd see in like a Star Wars, where they sort of are just flying like normal planes in an atmosphere. Gotcha. It's trying to take into account how you would do that in Zero G. Okay. I believe all 5 seasons are streaming on Amazon. If you want to check them out, I will warn you that they are from the first season is. You can kind of see the cardboard and the sets. It's a little like watching high school theater at times, but it does get very good. Like there's a point at which you're sort of like, you realize that, it starts out as sort of an episodic, like, they solve a problem every hour of the show sort of thing. And then an episode comes along late in the first season where they don't solve it. And you're like, this is never going to be the same again. And it isn't. Okay. It's great. If you can get past the, quarter century old production values, because it did air, I believe, on UPN or not UPN. That was Star Trek. It was maybe it was TNT. I don't remember what third tier cable network it aired on, but they were working with what they got. Yep. But, okay. It's really good.
Liberal Hack, thank you for gifting subs to a ton of people in our chat. That is flipping awesome. Thanks to everybody for showing up live on the show today. We're here, and we should be for the rest of the year now, here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I killed myself to get back on this schedule, but we're here now, and we should be good for the rest of the year. Again, we only have like 4 episodes of GameFace left, 5 episodes, and then our Game of the Year episode to cap off the year before the holiday season comes up. And we'll be here, ready to rock it, ready to talk to you about the biggest games and stories as we close out 2021. As I said earlier, you can find me on Twitter, at Dinfire. You can find Matt at MKeil. That's MKEIL. You can find Sifted at Sifted Games. And head to patreon.com/Sifted. That's SIFTD without the E. And please drop us a pledge. It was good to see that our Patreon did bump back up a little bit from where we were sitting at last week's episode. We need a lot more people, that's for sure, especially the holidays coming up and everything. Obviously, just like everybody, our expenses go up. I'm going to be heading home for Christmas for the first time in 2 years. So pretty excited about that. Anyway, much love to all you guys. Everyone have a great week. GameFace is up and out.